right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday night, so you know what that time it is for. All the latest happenings here in the world of sports, plus some WWE. We've got Backlash tomorrow night, AEW news, you name it, plus much, much more. With one of our favorites, he's certainly our guy that opens things up for us each and every Friday night. He is the host of the Hockey Fan Chat. He also dabbled a little bit in the world of professional wrestling. He's also our analyst for all things related here to the world of pro wrestling. That is Mr. Randy Dillon. Randy, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, Tom. It's Friday. We got Backlash tomorrow. A lot of NHL hockey. We had the draft. AEW is making a lot of good headways. A lot to be excited for.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. I always go back to when it's like February and people are like, it's cold. There's nothing going on. But now you're in May. You're in the throes of everything here. So it's a great time. And it's also Revenge of the Fifth, technically, certainly a Star Wars theme here. But we'll come back to all that. But I do want to talk WWE because we'll get to Backlash in a second, Randy. But obviously, I'm sure you're aware of the news here that we're going to see this 12-man tournament here to crown the new WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And obviously the press conference here saw Triple H talk about this and much, much more and give us kind of an idea of where we go with that. So give me your impressions on this and what do you think happens when it comes to who may come away with this new championship?
I first would say Seth Rollins, but a funny feeling in me telling me Seth Rollins is going to be facing Roman Reigns next month, later this month, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the undisputed Universal Championship. I just have this weird feeling, especially the promo on Monday. Drew McIntyre is a guy I am fully behind of him winning the title, but with the report saying he might be willing to walk away with the title, doesn't look like that. Then I'm trying to think, if it's not Drew or it's not Seth, yeah, I guess you could give it to Cody, but I think Cody's more fitted to finish off Roman. Then you got the likes of Finn Balor if he goes single. Rey Mysterio up there, he can still go, but I don't know if his name up there. The returning AJ Styles is definitely one you can put out.
Well, there's a crazy name that one of the wrestlers on Sportswire Radio who comes on regularly, Nicholas Crenson, the new Messiah, had mentioned. When I say this name, you're going to certainly say, huh? And he actually says he thinks Dominic Mysterio, because all of the reactions that Dominic gets, he says, why not go for it? Why not do something totally out of left field? And at first I kind of dismissed it. It's kind of like, really? Are you sure you want to do that? But then when you think about it, who does get maybe the biggest heel reactions right now? It very well could be Dominic Mysterio. What do you think about a Dominic Mysterio then, Randy Dillon?
I don't think right now the right time. I think Dom does have world championship pedigree in his future, but
Okay.
I don't think right now is the right moment. I think he is so nuclear with how his feud with Rey Mysterio has gone, his relationship with Rhea Ripley. How does him holding the title affect that relationship, and does it inflate the ego and break something between those two that has been money the last few months? So I could see Dom winning it then losing it, but I don't see him winning it and then keeping the title for a while.
Yeah, my thoughts were almost like, well, you really want to do that? To me, it's almost like, is he an Xbox sucks territory rather than actually doing that? I mean, I see the point. I mean, if you're going to do something totally shocking, I personally don't think he's ready for it. I think he needs a little bit of time. But I mean, you mentioned Drew McIntyre, and on paper, that would make the most sense. But according to what you said, I don't know if Drew McIntyre is even going to be in WWE much longer.
No, there's still far away talks. I think the reports are saying Drew may come to terms of him walking away from WWE, saying, okay, we couldn't get a deal done. And, unfortunately, that, I think the life of business, sports, we've seen players walk away from their teams, NFL, NBA, NHL, where they couldn't get a deal done. They go somewhere else. Could Drew McIntyre end up in AEW, New Japan, maybe back at Impact? But Drew McIntyre, if he's a top pedigree guy, this is not the guy who left in 2013 where he was part of 3MB with Jinder Mahal and Heath Slater. This is a top class athlete who's proven he can put a company on his back and be the top guy. So if he walks, a lot of interest there in what happens. But I'm still hopeful maybe something can be worked. But the big thing is, he's no longer advertising the show in London. They've advertised Roman Reigns now, so I think it looks dire. It's getting to look dire.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, Drew McIntyre, I'd certainly, I've said this before several times, I'd like to see him get another crack in the main event. Obviously, he was champion during that whole COVID era. Certainly, again, a very bizarre time in wrestling history, really in history of the world in general, but unfortunately has never gotten that crack. Let me get to, speaking of champions here, Skulls, who is a new champion. He has a new championship belt. He's been parroting on Facebook. And Skulls, you got to remind me what's the name of the title again, because I literally just saw it as I got out of the movie. So congratulations though on the belt though. Happy Taco Day. Well, it's Revenge of the Fifth, I would say. Los Cinco de
Cinco de
Mayo.
Mayo, so
Yeah. Well, some people are saying Revenge of the Fifth because yesterday was May the Fourth be with you. So I was kind of going with that. But Dom needs to be in 205. No, he ain't gonna be in 205. He's a little bit bigger than that these days. But is there anybody else before I kind of get to Backlash that you think maybe that we're missing here that could be an entrant and then maybe even be a legitimate contender to win? You mentioned AJ Styles. Now that makes some sense. I don't know though if he's got enough momentum at this point to be believable, but are there any other names that maybe we've left out that you think could be in the mix?
Gunther's one I can put on the list. Austin Theory could be another one. Bobby Lashley, I expect to be in the conversation, especially if the Drew McIntyre thing is true, because I think he's going to have to be the powerhouse take that. Sheamus, maybe. And Braun Breaker is, I would say, because we know he got drafted. Is he going to be in the tournament?
Now, Braun Breaker's a name I mentioned even right after WrestleMania when he lost the title there in NXT, and I thought that would be a guy that could be definitely a believable contender. Now, that would be an interesting name. As an entrant, I would say, yeah, I could see that. As a champion, I mean, that leaves to be desired. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Unless WWE throws a total curveball here, because he kind of said that he will go to wherever he wants to, and they go back to Brock Lesnar. What do you say on that?
Oh God, they go back to Brock Lesnar. We know Vince is running that show for like.
No, I mean he said it. Listen, Brock said that he's gonna go wherever he wants, and this is typical WWE. I mean, and Brock's been champion before in these kind of situations, and
doesn't make sense having two part-time champions. That's the worst thing.
No, I agree. But that's a Vince thing, and also maybe where it comes in with the Endeavor influence. Maybe that's why I would say that's a possibility.
I could see them because there's been talk we've seen in UFC. Brock having there's been the talk. Conor McGregor coming over. John Jones and Brock Lesnar going at it. We've had the talk of Daniel Cormier and Brock Lesnar going at it. So these could be reality now with Endeavor being on top and we could see some crossover. But I don't. Brock right now is in a very weird spot because I know we're going to talk about this later, but I think there's no way Brock should be winning tomorrow against Cody unless Cody's getting stretchered out of the match. That's the only way I see it.
Well, I mean, we're going to definitely talk about that because obviously that's going to be the biggest match arguably on the card. So, I mean, that'll definitely be an excellent segue here in a few minutes. We'll have to see what happens. So then let's go over here. WWE's in Puerto Rico and Backlash tomorrow night for the first time in over almost 18 years. I didn't even realize that, Randy. It's been that long since the WWE has been in Puerto Rico. And you think about the history of the WWE in Puerto Rico and just in wrestling and Puerto Rican history, it's an unbelievable amount of tradition, but it's been almost 18 years. So, I mean, what are you expecting here in some of these different matches when it comes to Backlash?
I'm expecting a very hot, excited crowd. Talent-wise, they're capable of really tearing down the house. Now, you don't have the big names. You don't have Roman Reigns. You don't have...
But you got one big name that's one of the biggest names in the world, though, that's going to be...
Bad Bunny, yep. You don't have your regular big name Roman Reigns, Trish Stratus, right now with part of the roster. You don't have any of those big hype names that can really sell. But I think this with all you really need is Bad Bunny. But I still think they could have some great matches tomorrow night. And the show could surprise a lot of people with how good it could be.
Absolutely. And speaking of Bad Bunny, obviously Bad Bunny, we saw the press conference there with him and Damian Priest, and also him on SmackDown tonight. I mean, so what's your expectations in a match like this? Is this an opening match for you? Is this a match that you put toward the end of the card? I mean, I would think with a hot crowd, part of me actually says open up with this, but give me your impressions here on a match between a Bad Bunny and a Damian Priest.
I think it's either open or closed. I think if
Okay.
you want to get the excitement for Bad Bunny, get it all pumped up, you start off the crowd. If you close it, you can still get the crowd pretty excited. And I think this is going to be a fun match because we've seen Bad Bunny a couple of years ago, the work he's done. He a no rules match, a street fight. We're definitely going to see the Latino World Order. You're definitely going to see Judgment Day involved with some parts. No rules. Interested what thing Bad Bunny do? The trust him and Priest have because don't forget these two are real life long time
Yep.
friends.
Well, we
I
heard
think
that
so.
we heard that earlier this week. I think it was on one of the shows where they talked about. I think was it Bad Bunny's mother taught Damian Priest or in English or math or something like that. It was one of the subjects I heard.
Something. So there's a lot of trust between these two. I think for Damian Priest as well, this is a big moment for him. All the hard work he has put in to get to this point, especially I think he's really had established himself. People think he's probably one of the been one of the best workers in the company, reliable. He's been in a lot of big situations lately, so I definitely believe like this match is going to be fun. Like I think I expect Bad Bunny to win, but I think we're going to see some fun in this match.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I want to give a shout out to the man that's going to be on here in about 25 or 30 minutes, and that is the brute force Brad Weiss, and he says, "Good evening, fellas. Good evening, John Gonzalez." John Gonzalez will be here when the brute force will be on in a little while. I have no doubt about that. The brute force. I had a segment on Tuesday with James D. Simone, of course, who the brute force kind of mentored and is a protege. It was one of his first proteges, really. And of course, James is going to go on and do bigger and better things here. He was at Clark High School, now will be at Misericordia University there in Pennsylvania, and the brute force, obviously, and I had a lot of people tune into that interview. But speaking of another match that you kind of mentioned there, Latinos and Rhea Ripley and Selena Vega. I mean, Selena Vega's kind of got the upper hand in this storyline in a way, but do you really think she has any chance tomorrow night?
No, Selena Vega is not going to win. What I am looking forward to is Selena Vega has already established herself as one of the top strong talking piece, as a very good manager. Uh, So she's really established in that sense of a good character. Her talent, we really have never gotten a chance for it to really been displayed. It's been kind of like a here and there. Like her whole Queen Selena and the tag team title run, I felt was really lackluster and didn't really display anything. But I definitely do believe Selena Vega and Rhea Ripley are gonna have a great show. But I do expect Rhea Ripley to win.
Yeah, obviously so. And I have a few people who have tuned in here. And Adam Morgan, who every time Adam comes on here says woo. And Joseph Bostrom is here. He says, "Hey guys, what's up, Randy?" I know Joseph Bostrom, not a wrestling guy, but we'll be talking other sports here in about a half hour or so. But speaking of another match here, Austin Theory, Bobby Lashley, Bronson Reed. I mean, an intriguing match in a way. There's obviously history with all three of these individuals, and I mean, do you expect Theory? I guess the law of logics would say he would retain the title here because Reed and Lashley have been feuding with each other for quite a while, or am I missing something here?
I expect Theory to retain, but heck, Vince calling the shot. We knew how big he was on Austin Theory, and this could be the setup for Austin Theory to walk out as world champion. So there's that. Like I expect Austin Theory to really get a beat down tomorrow between two heavyweights and Bronson Reed and Bobby Lashley, and we'll see what happens. Like, but I do expect Theory to kind of sneak his way to keep the U.S.
I
title.
was gonna say if he's getting a beat down the entire match, then it's the classic. He gets beat up all night, but finds a way to retain the title. That's basically what that tells you because Reed and Lashley don't really need the title. I mean, maybe Reed, it would be interesting, but I don't know if he's that believable. But yeah, I kind of feel like I'm with you that Theory's going to get beat up all night, but finds a way, as he usually does here, to get the W.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm staying here.
All right, and then obviously another match I think that we sort of touched upon here in a way, the six-man tag between Owens, Sammy, and Matt Riddle against the Bloodline. And I mean, I guess on paper, you've seen some, I guess you might want to say, not friction, but sort of, I guess, different ways that Owens and Zayn have kind of gone about their feelings toward the bloodline. But the bloodline do need a victory here. I mean, so where do you go in a situation like this?
Oh, this is really a tough one, Tom, because how everything is building. Listen, we are seeing the friction of the bloodline. The implosion of the bloodline is coming ahead of us, and hopefully soon rather than later. But because I don't feel there's not much more the bloodline can give as a story unless they go add a female member to it. But I think the bloodline's gonna have if we're seeing a bloodline implosion. I think we're gonna see Owens, Riddle, and Sami Zayn pull off the win here. I just think how things are going, how the brothers are,
But
they're
you don't think the Usos
undefeated.
deserve a victory here or need one because now they've lost a couple of times here in these situations, no?
They need a victory, but if the story is we want to see the implosion of the bloodline, we want to see the Usos struggling with Roman just getting so fed up with them and Solo choosing going with Roman and Heyman, I think that is the right move to go with.
All right, but I mean, I see that point as we're talking with Randy Dillon here, and I have some comments. We'll get to them here. Randy, of course, please follow on Instagram and Twitter at Randy DHILLON. I want to thank everybody here that is tuned in. But I mean, if you go down that road, and let's say the Usos don't win, and Roman goes and he brings Solo with him. He's going to stay with Paul. Is that where you start maybe the dissension, or maybe you have the Usos win and you continue it for a little while longer? But I mean, I guess if what you say is true, and the Usos don't win, maybe this does start the seeds of Roman kind of going it alone, and maybe that's where at some point he becomes believable, as where he finally drops his title. Or give me your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, because I think with where Roman is, we know Roman is the head of the table. He's the king, the crown piece of the bloodline, and it's going to be where there'd have to be dissent for everyone to kind of leave him to make him kind of that vulnerable. We've seen where Solo kind of had kind of put himself. He's put himself more toward Heyman and Roman. He's been around them a lot lately. Where the Usos, we saw last week what happened during the tag team match. Like there's some questions there. Like they say we're on the same page. We all know they're brothers, but I have to believe like when they lost the titles, either they would have to win them back right away to keep it strong, or they would have to lose. And we saw last week they lost. So it just makes sense at this point where either Jay and Jimmy are just going to say we've had enough and we're backing off, and then they go against Solo and Roman, and then Solo realize, well, I'm going to leave you and then that's the reason why Roman lost the title because he had no more backup, or it builds up for a while where they're like, listen, we're trying Roman, we're trying, and then it's just like enough's enough, and then Roman just they do what they did. Roman does what he hit them about the chair that with Kevin Owens happened at the Rumble, that beatdown.
Fair play here, and let me get to Laura Delamastin. Of course, Laura is the host of the Wrestling Roundtable group on Facebook, which allowed us to share our show here on Sportswire. And she says, I think Bad Bunny is going to beat Damian Priest tomorrow in the street fight. Well, I mean, I would think so, right? I mean, there really isn't anything, especially after Damian getting a victory over Ray on Raw, that would really tell you that Damian's going to walk away with a victory over Bad Bunny, unless I'm missing something here.
No, it makes unless we want to see Rise in Puerto Rico. I
No,
gotta think
that's what I was gonna say. I mean, he's a worldwide star. I mean, so obviously, I just don't see that happening here. And then I do have to mention Seth Rollins and Omos. I mean, any thought on that? A
Oh
real quick
god,
thought
this is.
before I get to the big match.
I still don't know why this match is happening. For God's sake, but I don't know how quick the match is gonna be. I think this is really for me a last chance for Omos to really kind of consider keeping his name as the Nigerian Prince, as one of the top giants. I know Road Dogg was saying the other day, listen, Omos has so much potential. This
But we've
guy
been hearing this for like 3 years. I even go back to remember when he was with AJ Styles for what 8-9 months, and he almost never did anything. So I mean, we've been hearing about this potential actually going on almost 4 years now. Frankly.
exactly. Like I even think before AJ Styles until he actually left AJ, I think the question was, okay, what are you going to do with him? Can he do it? Because listen, there hasn't been really many. If you go through WWE or even pro wrestling history books, how many really big guys over 7 feet tall have made a name from themselves? Now, obviously, we got the likes of Kane, we got The Undertaker, we got Paul White, The Big Show, Kevin Nash. But out of those few, like they're really like those are really the most famous ones for
Yeah.
tall guys. But what other title? Like, okay, maybe you add Sid Vicious to that point. But
Great Khali, technically,
yeah.
you
Mhm.
have to say he was a world champ. I know people
Yeah.
people look at that 1 month title run, they kind of laugh at it, but he was a world champion. He did
Mhm.
have some success. I mean, I don't know if you'd put him in that category, but he was credible for a while. I mean, is that a name you'd throw out there as well in that mix?
And then like you have the likes of people like the Great Khali, the Giant Gonzalez, like those guys that been giant that have been flop in WWE. And almost I think he had the character. I think they're doing the right thing, but there's just something he can't connect with. And I don't know if the selling or his ring skills or there's just something there that is not putting two and two together.
Yeah, I just, unfortunately, I just don't see it here with Omos, and Laura also wants to say hello. So before I do get to AEW for a couple of minutes, and then obviously get into the NHL, and the rest of the guys will be on here in about 20 or so minutes, and we'll speak with them and all things else related to the other stuff going on here in sports and everything else. But I mean, Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar. I mean, this is certainly, I would have to think if Bad Bunny is not opening, is opening, that this is the main event, hands down. This is a match here. It's got obviously a number of different components to it. I mean, so give me your impressions here in a match like this. What do you expect? And I mean, who do you think ultimately walks away here with a W? I mean, the law of logics, like you said at the top of the show here, that Cody badly needs this W to show that he can rebound and get himself back into that title mix. And Cody himself even said it. He said it on Raw. He needs a victory here. But you know it is WWE and you know it is Brock Lesnar. So, Randy, what's your thoughts on all this?
Logic and storytelling sense tell me Cody should get the win. He's gonna get beaten. He's gonna be taking the suplex city. He's gonna get hurt that time. But I think if the story to tell, Cody's gonna be resilient for him to get that rematch, for him to fight on top, to claw, to show this is what he's really been working for. Listen, there was a setback at Roman, but that showed me I know what I need to do. And a win over Brock Lesnar does put you in the opportunity. The only other outcome I could see in this match is where Cody gets beaten so bad the referee has to stop it and he gets taken out of the stretcher. Because then I think you can go to another match with him and Brock, and then Cody can get the win there because he's even more motivated than ever. He was
But that
taken out.
takes him out of the tournament, though. Doesn't that take him out of contention if that's the case?
Yeah, it may take him out for a few weeks because the only thing is like there's the people saying this is not the title Cody won. Like, and Cody, the only reason I don't put Cody's name in this tournament because I think for what the story's been to finish Dusty's story, for him to win the one title the Rhodes family hasn't won, and that is the WWE Championship, it doesn't make sense for him to win that world title. So that's where I think if somehow, let's say Cody gets taken out, he had the rematch in Jeddah in Jeddah with Brock, and he win that one, then maybe he potentially win Money in the Bank, and then said Roman, "I'm coming for you," and challenge him at SummerSlam. That's the way I can see it. And the other thing that concerns me with this is if Cody wins and he's going to fight Roman, win. SummerSlam sounds like the right spot, but I've been hearing now they want him to keep the title till next September. I think that's going a little too crazy
Are
at
we
that
talking
point.
about September of 24?
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then I mean, Cody ain't getting anything anytime soon, and that makes to me zero sense. That's a little long. I mean, are we basically building a movie here rather than a storyline for a pay-per-view? That's what it sounds like to me.
I don't know. There's still the talk that they want to do Rock and Roman. I think Rock and Roman's done. I think if it
Yeah,
wasn't
I
gonna
think the
happen,
only way you're going to see The Rock is on the movie screen here coming up this
yeah,
summer. I don't think
like
you're going to see him in the ring.
Unless the thing Rocky Balboa, but I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
uh,
I don't know. That's some really interesting things here. People are really going the long game, but yeah, I don't know. We're going to talk about all of this here after Backlash tomorrow. We're going to talk about it with the Pipe Bomb Wrestling podcast guys here, Chris Belcher and Andy York, the Young Buck and Andy York, and we have their brand new show. We're going to play also before the show. And Randy might be with us here also, so we'll be looking forward to recapping the show and giving everybody's thoughts on that. You can follow the Pipe Bomb Wrestling podcast on PW Podcast on Twitter. Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast on Instagram as well, like their pages on Facebook and YouTube. So we'll talk about it afterwards and we'll see how it all went and maybe anything else in between you'll tell us. And Randy, then going over to AEW, obviously 60,000 tickets have already been sold here for Wembley. And I see so many people on my Facebook that friends of mine, wrestlers, already said they got their tickets. I mean, wow, this has even impressed, I think, some of the wrestlers in that locker room. And you got to talk about this here for a couple of minutes. Just the amount of success that AEW has had here with all in 60,000 tickets already. My goodness.
I know at times I've given Tony Khan said some things about him not being right, where he made some mistakes. He doesn't know what he's doing. But I'm giving Tony Khan credit here. He knew there was a market in London, in England, that had potential that could sell at a big event, and he deserved full credit on what he's done. 60,000 tickets is really impressive at this point. I still I said when the news first came out, the goal would be between 60 to 80,000. Listen, 80,000 might not be the goal. They might actually literally sold out that building.
I was going to say, because if it's 60,000 now, today is May the 6th in England, right? Let's play along for England's purposes. I mean, I think they get to 80,000, frankly, by the end of the month, maybe.
Exactly. So you're looking at full sellout arena, and I think it just showed how that UK fan base really wants a big show. I know there was talk, I was reading earlier, saying the Wembley Stadium was offered last year, Duddy, but Cardiff gave them more money. They thought about going to Wembley for Money in the Bank, but they decided, okay, let's play it safe and go to a smaller arena. But the UK then for some special show, like the question now going to be, there's so much hype in this show now. How are you going to build on to make it really the greatest AEW show maybe of all time so far until you have a bigger venue and a bigger audience like this in North America? Because you have to go the way that the fans are going to be there, and we know UK fans, they are a very passionate. They'll tell you how it is. If it's
absolutely, you know, we're the home of wrestling coverage in the UK. We know it better than anybody. I mean, you know that.
So definitely, there's a great work for AEW done, but the question is how they're going to build it up, how the story's going to be, how the matches are going to be. It's going to be interesting. And then on how things are going on Dynamite, I'm really enjoying the Adam Cole and Jericho thing. It's really getting to a personal involvement where I know the feuds today don't get as personal, but I think when they're that personal, you get invested in it because it's really
absolutely
despicable, the hate between the two. It just you just want to see them go at it, and I think the personal line just adds another element. I'm glad we're getting the 4-pillar match at Double or Nothing.
Yeah, with Jungle Boy, Sammy, Darby, and MJF. Yep.
I think it's going to be a good match. I think they've kind of told the story up to that point, but again, let's be honest, MJF's going to walk out, and we'll see how things are going with AEW. But listen, this week they've done a lot of great stuff. I think you go back to last year with the whole Punk fiasco, the All Out, the Elite, and I know there's still questions about contracts and stuff, but I think AEW deserves the credit for what they've done with the show.
Absolutely. No question about that here. And I wanted to work in very quickly before I get to the NHL because I do want to ask you a few things on the NHL, especially the Florida Panthers, because I think you actually have a Florida Panthers jersey on you. So I had to work that in there. But, I mean, I had to ask you about Naomi because Impact kind of made this little, I guess, under the radar move here. a few weeks ago, and you think about Naomi. This is somebody here that, I guess it's Trinity now in Impact, but I mean, we haven't seen her in just about a year now. I think it's been about a year, give or take. And I mean, this is maybe a move. I don't know if it puts Impact to where it was at one point years ago, but it's kind of a nice move. And as somebody who watches their product, and they've kind of had a lot of momentum the last few months, I think, with just the overall content and the storylines. They've had an excellent women's division, might be the best women's division, I have to say, in all of pro wrestling. And they've had also some really, really nice wrestlers that they've added. They've kind of got an identity here for the first time in a long time. And just what's your impressions on that? Is that something that you think there that really maybe Impact can kind of use as a springboard a little bit to continue to grow that brand a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I think the big thing with Impact is what Naomi is doing is there's been a lot of stars that you look at that been at Impact who's really helped build their career. We look at Drew McIntyre when Drew
How about
Galloway.
Bobby Lashley? Bobby Lashley made a big comeback also. I mean, you think about where he was and what that. I mean, how about, I think Kurt Angle had actually his best work that nobody really knows about in TNA.
Exactly. You got the likes of Kurt Angle. You look at some of the superstars that jumped ship there, like I'm trying to think who else. Bobby Roode had some great work in.
I think EC3 is a name that you got to throw out there when I think about Impact.
Out in WWE, but Chelsea
in Impact,
Green,
he had a great career. Chelsea Green, Deanna
James,
right now currently, yep.
Impact has really done a lot of great. Like I know they don't get the recognition of how good the company is, but what they've done for talent and giving talent the opportunity, it's really incredible. And I think for Naomi or Trinity, listen, she's been with WWE for a while, for quite some time now. She had one title run, and it was and really she couldn't get much more from it. They really couldn't pull a trigger on her to see what was going to happen. So I think this is a good opportunity for her to really come about, make her own, and then if she ever does decide to go back to WWE, she might be a bigger star than what she is or could be down the road.
And I just think it's a big deal really for Impact in a way, because it's a company that obviously went through a lot of ownership changes, different networks, people that couldn't find the place and everything else there. So we'll certainly see what happens. But I do have to ask you for a few minutes in the NHL before we get to closing thoughts here. At the top, the Florida Panthers. I mean, Randy, this was a team, I remember, I want to say maybe about 7 or 8 weeks ago, right? We were talking about the NHL and the wild card race in the Eastern Conference. And I remember bringing up the Florida Panthers to you. And I was like, well, what do you think about the Florida Panthers, right? They have the offense. They have the firepower. They were supposed to be at the top of the Eastern Conference. They were pretty much, I would say, for most of the season, big underachievers, but they get hot just enough to make it into the postseason. And they were a first wild card, but they fall to the second wild card. And we think, all right, they're playing the Boston Bruins. Maybe they'll win one game. And yet they're down 3-1. They win one game in Boston, but the way they played in Miami there was like, okay, well, this series is going to end. And then it looks like it was going to end literally to the point in the 7th game with about 1 minute left. In fact, they had a 2-goal lead in Game 7. The Bruins come back and take a lead in the 3rd period, and it looks like it's about to end. And then the Florida Panthers tie it, and then about 7 or 8 minutes, I think, into overtime, they actually win it and pull off, I think, in sports history, one of the greatest upsets. And right now they go into Toronto, who, by the way, win their first playoff series in almost 20 years, and they take the first 2 games there in Toronto. And Randy, how do you explain these Florida Panthers?
Well, you're absolutely right. The Florida Panthers, they were with a lot of expectation the regular season for this team, and they were really struggling. The goaltending was a mixed bag. The defense struggled. Matthew Tkachuk was there, same with Barkov, but a lot of other people weren't going. And then now you just look at this team and listen, when it came to Game 4 against Boston, I was writing them off. I'm like, they should start packing their golf bags, get their clubs ready, because they're going to be golfing here soon. But Game 5, give credit to Sergei Bobrovsky. Like, he's had since maybe Game 7, since letting in that third goal in Game 7, he hasn't looked back. Like these last 2 games, he has been incredible. Matthew Tkachuk is carrying this team on his back with the likes of Alexander Barkov, and a guy who I think who's really been not getting enough talk in a good way is Sam Bennett, who's
Yep.
played some great playoff hockey. I know there's some talk they should he have been suspended for what he did tonight. The game has changed so much, but I don't know that really it's a sendable offense. I think it's more worth a penalty, but they're doing everything right. And listen, they're 2 games away from going to the conference final for the
They
first
haven't
time
gone
since
since
1996.
1996. I heard that the other day. Randy, I'm like, have they really had that little success? I mean, that's a really long time.
Oh, they have had very little success, playoff success, making the playoff. And this is really going to be the test here for them because can they pounce on a Leaf team that might be disbelieving in themselves? The talk with Toronto was going to win this series in 4 to 5 games, and I was like, this is at least going to go 6 to 7. But the Panthers right now are doing a lot of great things. They're playing them hot. They're playing hot. Sergei Bobrovsky is probably the best he's played in years since his Vezina days in Columbus. So,
Or how about when he stole the series? Not stole it, but when they won is in 2019 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And again, intriguing that Bobrovsky was the goaltender then, and what was considered to be one of the greatest upsets in NHL history, at least. And then this year, I mean, kind of the irony there.
yeah, I think if you're an NHL team, you set any record, don't play Sergei Bobrovsky in a playoff round for the first round. Otherwise, you're going to go home.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating with the Florida Panthers. You think about it now, Joseph Boschem, yes, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals in '96, their third season in the league, I think. And then kind of after that, they had very little, even just trips to the postseason. Obviously, in 2016, I had a front row seat for the Panthers, and that was a great series. But even before that, they had maybe a couple of playoff appearances. Now, recently, they've been a little bit better. These past couple of years have been into the postseason, obviously winning around last year. But other than that, I mean, this is a franchise that's had just very little success. So it's kind of really surprising here. In Toronto, we spoke about maybe they have house money by technically winning a postseason series. But I do have to ask you also on the New Jersey Devils. Devils beat the Rangers, but Carolina looks like they're going to be up 2-0. And I mean, what do you expect there? Can the Devils turn it around?
Oh, this was a series. I think a lot when the Devils beat the Rangers, a lot of us were saying the Devils are going to go to the conference. Whoever win the Devils Rangers series is going to go to the conference final. It doesn't look like that. You got to give Carolina the credit. They played a really good defensive game. Their offensive coming alive on the backs of Sebastian Aho and Brent Burns. For the New Jersey Devils, they need to find ways to create offense. This looked like the team we saw in the first 2 games of the Rangers series, where they got to find a turn around. The question is going to be, who do they go as game 3 at this point? Akira Schmidt, listen, he was great against the Rangers, but these last 2 games, he hasn't played great. So I have to think, do you go back to Vitek Vanacek for game 3? They got to find a way to, they're playing a team that is very good defensively, that doesn't give up a lot. We saw that against the Islanders. They didn't give the Islanders much for some games. So I think for the Devils, you're going to have to create offense. You're going to have to go hard to the net and find a way. And Freddie Anderson, he's looking sharp also. Came in game 6. We saw that first goal. We thought we're going to game 6. I thought the Islanders.
I was going to say last week, everybody kind of lampooned Brendan Moore's decision to go to him, and after the goal in the first, I think 9 or 10 minutes of the first period, he was fantastic, and he's been great here in these 2 games. Maybe the Devils, though, like to play with their backs against the wall because they were down 2-0 against the Rangers, and maybe that's the point here. But I
don't think it's a good success just because when you're down all the time in the series, you have to play with a lot of urgency. And I think you go back to last year with the Rangers. They were down 3-1 against the Pittsburgh. They were down 2-0 against Carolina, where the Devils are going to be that same spot. When they were, I think, with the when they played Tampa, they were up 2-0. But I think by the time they got to game 3 or 4, I think they were just out of gas, and Tampa took advantage. So I think when you're playing at the ball too much, you're on the gas. I know Justin says Schmidt hasn't been awful at this point, but I think he's allowed in the Rangers Devils series, he only had 1 game where he allowed a goal or more, and now he's allowed 3 to 4 goals in his last 2 games. So it'll be interesting what happens. I would think my bet would be they go to Vanacek in game 4 unless you feel he can do better, but you have to do something to change the momentum at this point.
Well, we're going to certainly find out. And also in the Western Conference here, Kraken and Stars are 1-1. And I was watching Vegas and Edmonton, and Vegas takes the first game there. And it was a tight game, but an explosive game. And also here, before I ask you one more question on hockey, remember, Carolina has a way of blowing series. Yes, we remember that from last year, certainly. And the Islanders did come back in the first round series. They made it interesting, but we'll have to see. But and also here, Justin would like to add, he's going to be on here in about 5 or so minutes. Graves needs to come out. Luke Hughes in, tighten up the defense. Well, you have to do something here, right? I mean, you're
And
going to
I,
have to.
and I think with Luke Hughes going in, they might be able to create the more plays from the back end, try to get the puck out. Because we saw with the Devils, especially in the Rangers series, once they got their speed going, that really was their assets. I know Carolina is a fast team like them, so I think you might, if your best chance to win is rather than playing a tight defensive game, you need to open the ice up, getting everyone go more north-south to trade more
Yep.
offense.
Well, we're going to certainly find out. I want to ask you one question locally before I get to closing thoughts, and I'll bring on the Sportswire team in a second here. Because I was reading the papers here in New York today, and I was reading about Gerard Gallant. And obviously, this is a topic that I'm sure is going to dominate some of the back pages here, at least in the sports section in the tri state area. And what do you think happens with a Gerard Gallant? Does he come back? He's obviously got a short leash with most of these teams. We saw it in Florida, we saw it in Vegas, and Rangers certainly fans of Billy McInerney expressed his displeasure with him last week on the show. And does Gallant get another shot here? 110 point and 107.7 season this year. And you would think on paper that definitely warrants you a couple of years to go. But I mean, what do you think here happens with the Gerard Gallant?
This is very interesting because the Rangers are now in the win mode territory, and let's be honest, this year Gallant didn't get the job done, especially the addition
No.
the Rangers made. Tarasenko, they added
Kane.
Patrick Kane. They added some game breakers that really could change a series. And Tarasenko was big. Kane made an impact, but the one thing I think Gallant really struggling was is getting Artemi Panarin going in
I
the
was about to
postseason.
say Panarin. I mean, was basically a non-factor in this series. I mean, literally, did he even? I don't even think he scored in this series. I mean,
Maybe
that's
get two, three,
abominable.
maybe 2 to 3 points the whole series. So I think last
That's
year as
it.
well, he was invisible also. So I think the question is, Gallant, Panarin's one of your best guys on that team. You need to get him going for the playoffs. And 2 postseasons in a row, it hasn't worked. Now there is a rumor going around the Rangers are going to try to get Joel Quenneville to come back and
Yeah,
coach.
but didn't the
Now,
league kind of put a freeze on him doing
yeah,
anything?
that's the thing is going to be the question. Is I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. Listen, we saw all the stuff that came out with Kyle Beach. I think in a situation like that, there needs to be consequences. They covered it up.
And in
I
the New
think
York market, for him to come here with the New York media, I mean, that would be a lot of keg of worms there to be open.
exactly, but I think if they can't go that market, I think you have to bring Gallant back because really, the only other
Who
coach
else
we
is
can,
out there? You want Peter Laviolette? He has not had most recently any
yeah,
postseason success of note.
exactly. Like there's really like if you can't get Quenneville, because I don't think that's something you can even at this point. No, it's not an option. Peter Laviolette, like yeah, you could try, but listen, he didn't. He couldn't get the job done in Nashville when the
Bruce
team was
Boudreau, do you want him? It didn't work in Minnesota. I mean, would you
no
want Bruce
like
Boudreau?
yeah. So like for the Rangers, you're really in a tough situation with coaching. And there's not really some high quality coaches out there at this point because I would say Barry Trotz, but listen, we know Barry Trotz is now the GM in Nashville. Like he's not
Yeah,
going
I was gonna
anywhere.
say after, and that was talked about here. I was reading. I just don't see Barry Trotz. I mean, Bruce Boudreau doesn't work out in Vancouver. Had success though in Washington and Minnesota, but I don't know if that's the right move. Laviolette recently hasn't had success. I mean, he's coached here with the Islanders, but that was a different time, different place. I kind of think at the end of the day, you give him one more shot. Obviously, it's a win now team. Hopefully, they make the adjustments they need to when it comes to the postseason. But I think they're kind of stuck pretty much with Gallant, and they go with him one more year at the very least. Start the season with him, I think.
I think you have to at this point. I don't think, like I said, unless a candidate comes, unless you're going to go with Daryl Sutter, which I don't think you should even try that. But
Well, he's available, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's another one, kind of like to me, like a little bit more on the poorer man's Peter Laviolette side. I mean, I guess you could He
Hey,
could go
maybe
there.
George come available. They go back and try Tortorella again.
I was reading about that in the New York Post today, but I would really think they got away from Tortorella. I mean, he's another guy that's got an even shorter window than a Gallant, so I would kind of move away from that. I mean, you're basically going for recycled coaches at this point. There isn't
Exactly.
too many. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not Quenville to me. I don't think you do it. I mean, so I think, look, we'll have to see what happens here. But Randy, I want to give you the floor here before I bring on the rest of the guys in a second. I want to give you the opportunity to share anything else we should know about on the hockey fan chat. Obviously, maybe we'll see you tomorrow night after Backlash, and certainly looking forward to obviously being with the Pipe Bomb Wrestling podcast guys to recap the show. Hopefully, we'll have a great show there. But I turn it over to you and anything else you want to plug, share, say, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tom. Just a couple of things to say in the NHL note. I'm very interested to see what Edmonton does tomorrow. Listen, Stuart Skinner has been ferocious these last few games. Almost cost him the game 6 against LA. He wasn't great in Vegas in game 1. So I'm very interested. Do they go
What's
back?
his save percentage? Like 70 at this point? Literally those last 2 games. It's atrocious.
Yeah, so I'm very interested. Do they go to Jack Campbell? Because let's not forget, without Jack Campbell, would they even come back against the Kings?
No.
With the wrestling standpoint, very interested to see how Backlash is going to work out. Like I said, it's not the most popular card, but I think it will be an exciting show. With Cody and Brock, there's so many questions on how that match is going to go. And I really think a Cody Rhodes win for him to keep going and to end Roman title reign sooner rather than later, which I mean sooner SummerSlam than next year. AEW, a lot of great things going on there, but the tag team division there, I feel, is getting a little messy because FTR got the title. The Acclaim has taken a huge step back. The
Which people were afraid of, by the way. Remember when they lost the titles? Everybody kind of was afraid of that, and that's kind of what's happened here.
Exactly. The House of Black really hasn't done much with the trios. Blackpool comeback and the Elite. Hopefully we see more of that because, again, that has really been hot. And I'm really excited to see what Trinity does in AEW and Impact because, like I said, we've seen so many different superstars go there and make a huge name for themselves and leave, become even bigger. So I think she had that possibility as well.
Absolutely, and I kind of think it's a different time when some of those people had come in because now it's kind of a move that I think maybe it puts them in another category and improves their women's division here. But I want everybody to follow Randy at Randy DHILLON on Instagram and Twitter, and maybe we'll see him tomorrow night if he's not doing anything. And Randy, good stuff as always. I'm joined here by the rest of the guys, and looking forward to maybe seeing you tomorrow night. And if not, we'll definitely see you Friday. And thank you as always, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. Great thing, everyone. Have a good night.
All right, that was Randy Dillon here of the Hockey Fan Chat. Also, he does hosting here for us when it comes to all things related to wrestling. And we're joined here by Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, Rob Maraska here, and I think I have Chris Bizea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, and the man that I saw Tuesday, the brute force Brad Weiss. And fellas, how you doing tonight?
Good.
Well, how you doing?
I think you pretty much know how things are going.
Well, you're down in the dumps, but look, I mean, ultimately, look, hopefully, like you have a track record. You came back, and we'll see what happens. But obviously, I got Rob Maraski here, so I'm going to do a little bit of baseball here first, and I'll move on to the other sports. But I do want to talk, obviously, Mets and Yankees. I'm actually very prepared to talk baseball, really for the first time this season here on Sportswire. I've got everything up in the numbers. I've kind of studied all this stuff for the first time in a while, and we'll start with the Mets first on the positive note here. Mets do get a victory 1-0. Senga looks good. And I mean, Rob Maraska, your perspective on the Mets here is they get a much needed win. They were 2-7 their last 9 games going into it, and the starting pitching has been atrocious. But the Mets get a little bit of maybe a shot in the arm in the pitching. It is against the Rockies, who were on a 4-game winning streak, for what that's worth. But give me your impressions here of a much needed Met victory tonight.
Yeah, they definitely needed it because Detroit was just a disaster, and it just showed you that the Mets have a lot of holes that they have to fill. Their pitching is just it's horrible. They made a lot of stupid mistakes in Detroit, and it was just a disaster. Tonight, Senga came back. He pitched a shutout. He had 4 strikeouts, and the Mets won the game 1-0. So that's something positive. It's against Colorado, but you know what?
They did win 4 in a row going into tonight, so they are playing a little bit better. I know the record's terrible, but they did win 4 in a row before going into this.
Yeah, and Nimmo tonight, Nimmo was hitting. I mean, yesterday he did make that bonehead move in the 9th inning where he tried to steal second with the
Yeah, you know what? He was getting lit up today in the New York press about that. I mean, if you were reading the papers, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, tying runs up at the plate. They needed to win that game, and who knows? He was aggressive. Buck stuck up for him. It happened. It's over. He hit tonight, and the Mets won. So let's hope this is the start of something. But really, their pitching. We knew that their pitching was old before the season started, but it's really, they're really. Scherzer has not looked well. He came back from that suspension, pitched a horrible game. Verlander only gave up.
Yeah, he was okay. I mean, he gave up the 2 home runs early and then kind of adjusted. I mean, it wasn't a terrible outing. I mean, I guess he pitched all right. I mean, you would like a little more than 5 innings, though, but he pitched okay, respectable.
Yeah, it was, his first game of the year, but still, that Detroit series was just a joke. The Atlanta series, that's another thing. That the Friday night game, they should have never played that game.
Then they split at least on Monday, which was,
and which had everybody talking about a retractable roof, which, Cohen's looking into it. But if the Wilpons would have done that when the stadium was built, it would only cost them $150 million. Now,
yeah. I mean, well, people are looking at it now because today's May 5th, and this last 2 weeks, the weather in New York has just been, I mean, atrocious. I mean, this is like the worst I've ever seen a prolonged period of weather in May. It's just been abominable.
Yeah, it's horrible. But now they say it would cost $800 million for them to add it on to the stadium.
Well, yeah. Well, that ain't happening anytime soon.
So if the cheap Wilpons would have just done it, it would have been $150 million. But anyway, the Mets get the win tonight. 1-0. A good game. Senga looked good, so you got to be happy about that.
No, absolutely. And the Mets, again, going into today, what was interesting was they've been shut out 6 times this season. Last year, they were shut out only 8 times. And the starting pitching, I read the line, I think they're 10-13 their last 23 outings with an ERA over 5. So this was kind of a much-needed performance here. And I'll get to you, Justin, next. Obviously, Mets do get a much-needed victory, but the team was definitely limping. And obviously, I guess with the extra wild card, they're still in it right now. But certainly when it comes to the National League East, Braves have gotten off to a hot start. Marlins have kind of hung in there, but Mets do get a W. Maybe it'll lead to something, some home cooking. I don't know, but give me your impressions on tonight and where we are with this Mets team.
I think it's time we be honest with ourselves. This team sucks. They're not a good baseball team. I don't care about the win tonight. They did absolutely nothing. The only thing you're taking out tonight is the fact that Kodai Senga pitched 6 scoreless, and you hope that he could parlay that into some more good starts. But this team is absolutely garbage. I mean, you get swept by the Detroit Tigers. I mean, it's just an absolute embarrassment. And it was an embarrassment of a decision, like Rob said, to even play the game Friday night when you knew the weather was going to be bad. It turned into a 5-inning loss. I think they got shut out in that game too.
Yep.
And this team is just – their offense has been Jekyll and Hyde. Some nights it's been good. Some nights it's been not. And to be honest – right now, their offense is the least of my concerns. Their pitching is just an absolute abomination. Max Scherzer is done. You will not see another good start out of him again.
I would imagine we'll get a good start. I mean, to say every
a good start, but we're not going to see dominant Max anymore. That's gone. Those are long gone. You can maybe take solace in the fact that Justin Verlander looked pretty good yesterday. I know he gave up the back-to-back homers in the first inning to Hunter Green and Javi Baez, but he looked okay. He definitely got settled in as the game went on. So I do have hope going forward with Verlander. I hope tonight turns into, like I said, a good stretch of starts for Kodai Senga. But then you're also basing the back end of the rotation on what? Tyler Miguel, who's good, but he's a
Joey
back, but he's
Lucchesi,
a
I
back end
guess.
of the start. He's a back end of the rotation starter. How much can you really expect? And Joey Lucchesi, who's been okay, but I mean, again, another back end of the rotation guy. How much can you really expect out of him? And a bullpen that's not that great.
I mean, the big deal was Dominic Leone comes in yesterday, and we get
First of
him
all,
back.
dude, where the heck did they get him from? I didn't even know he was on the roster.
And
then
I was going to
and I
say,
hear
that
on the
was like a
radio
big deal. We
yesterday
got
he
this
called
guy
into
is
the
going to be
game.
the godsend to this Met bullpen. I mean, I guess that's where we're at right now with this team.
I don't know, but all I know is this team is crashing and burning before our eyes, and the biggest fundamental issue is that you pay two 40-year-old pitchers $43 million, and you got nothing really in the pipeline. Listen, for all the talent that the Mets have in their farm system, the one problem is their talent lies as bats. Whether it's Beatty and Alvarez, who we've seen in the major leagues, Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, who we should be seeing very soon. All the Mets' top prospects are position players. They really don't have. They have a couple guys who are performing pretty well at Double-A and are pretty decent sized prospects, but that's Double-A, and they're not that close to big league action.
Well, what you say is
don't
basically this is
that
a
young
win now
starter
team.
on the way.
Right. Well, this is a win now team. When you have Scherzer and Verlander, who
It is
again
a
are
win now team. But guess what? We need to just all accept the fact that they're not going anywhere this year. They're not.
Well, they'll be in it because of the extra wild card.
I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Sure.
I'm going to be completely honest with you, and this is not just because I'm in a bad mood because of the Devils. This is legitimately how I feel about the New York Mets. They're going to miss the postseason this year.
Well, look, there is a possibility of that. I mean, there's no question that right now. I mean, we're still about what a fifth of the season in, give or take.
Listen, I know we haven't hit Memorial Day, and I know that it's still somewhat early in the season, but there's just too many things that concern me with this team that aren't necessarily that fixable. I know that they can make moves at the deadline, but there are not moves that are readily accessible that really are going to fix this team to a point where I could actually think that this team could do any damage. The National League is a little bit better than people give credit for. Obviously Atlanta's going to take off in the division. Pittsburgh's off to a great start.
They lost 4 in a row going into today, but yes, they were.
But you know what? They ran it to Tampa Bay, and
we're going to get to them in a second. We'll get into them in a second. Yep.
Milwaukee has been pretty good. Obviously, San Diego and Los Angeles as Fernando Tatis hits another home run for the Padres. We know the Padres and Dodgers are going to be there. Even the Arizona Diamondbacks have been pretty good so far.
You got to start thinking about it, right? We talked about it last month at the beginning, the first couple of weeks, Arizona and Pittsburgh. Do you buy into them? But, there comes a certain point that maybe these teams have enough of a cushion. Certainly Pittsburgh built up a little bit more capital, and they're in a weak division because, the Cardinals are off to their worst start since 1973 when Richard Nixon was president. They're in last place in the latest.
Yeah, I think it's time we have a conversation about the Cardinals, too, because what we're seeing is, like you said, very unprecedented.
This is I didn't realize it's been that bad.
The Cardinals are never a bad baseball team, and they are a bad baseball team.
Think about that, right? 1973. The Cardinals are kind of, they haven't won as many World Series as the Yankees, right? But they've kind of been the Yankees of the National League because they're always competitive. They're always in it. And that was a really crazy stat. But before I get to
I always feel like a bad year for them is 85 wins.
Yeah, like 83-ish, and they're still in it, but they find ways. And I do have some comments here, so let people say hello. Joe Odell here of Sleepy Hollow says this will be the start of something good, like the day young Rob Maraska put on a Mets hat. Well, that's going to go back in the time machine. Can't be though as bad as Bobby Tats of the Pinstripe Chronicles. No, Bobby Tats, I'm just kidding on. Pitching is killing the Mets. Yeah, starting pitching, I think I definitely agree with you. You're talking about an ERA over 5 these last several weeks, and Brad, because I'll get to Chris. I'll go to the Yankees. next after you. But the Brute Force, I want to come to you because we have another one of our favorites, another one of our wrestlers I was speaking with off the air yesterday, Mr. Omen Black, the IMF, the Iowa Midwestern Wrestling Federation heavyweight champion of the world. And he is a heavyweight. He is a super heavyweight. Says greetings. He also says it's always good to see the Brute Force again. Now, the Brute Force, I mean, have you met Omen Black in a darkened alley somewhere? Did you meet him somewhere maybe in the cornfields out there in Iowa? He is a world champion. He is a heavyweight. He was actually telling me how he's a big fan of yours off the air. We were having a conversation because, well, I guess I should say this, or maybe I shouldn't say it, but Omen will be making a special appearance next week on Sportswire. But another wrestler he's actually feuding with, but I'll save that for during the week on Sportswire. But the Brute Force, did you run into Omen Black maybe on a basketball court or a cornfield recently? Or he says it's good to see you again.
Well, I'll say this, and good evening, guys. But first of all, I'll say this about Omen Black, all right? Listen, I don't know Omen Black, and I don't know a lot of these wrestlers, but I do appreciate that they actually are getting to know me. I don't know why they're getting to know me. I mean, it's probably from guys like James D. Simone and John Gonzalez, getting them all to try to, gang up on me.
Another one who's probably, probably celebrating 420 right now. Yep.
They're all trying to get these wrestlers to gang up on me and, take me down or something. I don't know what it is.
You know what it is? I think it's the size. I think it's your size. I think people look at it and...
This is what I tell James D. Simone all the time. It's jealousy of my height. They all want it. All right, and they just want to see me go down.
But I'm tall, but I'm not like your height. See, like my height's, I'm okay, but you're like 6'5". So they look at it like people see that on the screen. So automatically there's that natural gravitation to it. So I think that's why maybe you've seen this increase in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So listen, let me get to the topic right now because I think Omen's going to be very happy with what he's about to hear from the Brute Force. Because normally, I know why he respects me. It's because I can get my hot takes going. And boy, I hope I could keep myself calm for this one. All right,
let's talk about the New York Mets here before Anthony Finkel talks about 420, because I think that kind of percolated his attention. Yeah.
Here's the thing, and I hate to really agree, right, with Justin Gianelli, but I'm about to, because this is what I normally put up with the New York Mets, all right? And this is the guy who I've been confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you and put this back on the screen, all right? Because this is what needs to come up, and it might be even worse by next week, all right? Because the New York Mets are a travesty right now because I am pissed off. I am upset. They are embarrassing me, all right? You freaking lose 3 games to the Detroit Tigers on the road in a row?
That was abominable.
That is embarrassing, disgusting, disgraceful. I don't know how many more words I need to say. You cannot lose 3 games to the Tigers. And this team, by the way, this is not the first time they've been swept. Justin mentioned Milwaukee, right, where they stunk. Where they were against the Nationals. They couldn't win a damn series against a team that can't win against anyone else. I mean, the New York Mets, ladies and gentlemen.
The Giants winning only 2 of 4. You should have won at least 3 after winning the first 2 games.
And listen, ladies and gentlemen, all right, they are on thin ice of 500 right now, barely, cropping over. I mean, it is embarrassing watching this team play. And I say team because there's a lot of culprits. Okay, and listen, you guys don't want to talk about the lineup. I don't want to talk too much about it either, but I will mention a few names that need to be talked about because the Brute Force has to pick on certain guys today, and I will. And if I were able to pick on certain guys, I'll probably pick on a whole bunch of them, but I'll pick only a few. All right? The first thing I'd like to say is this. I love Gary Cohen, and I love the guys on SNY.
Happy birthday to him this past weekend. Yep, happy birthday to him. Happy belated.
But I will say this. They said something that absolutely irked the heck out of me. And I was like, are you serious right now? This is what you're saying? They were talking about the pitching staff being so bad that, they're doing so bad that we should be looking forward to the return of Carlos Carrasco next week. We should be
saw that, yeah.
We should be like, woohoo! Carrasco's back. Oh, please. This guy was batting practice the last time he was pitching. He was horrible. He couldn't locate. And he's just going to add to the horrible freaking rotation that we already have. I've already picked on Max Scherzer this season. He has been an atrocity. Horrible. Batting practice himself. He can't do anything right. He has been terrible. And like Justin said, all those damn millions that we're paying him to do this.
He hit 91 anymore on the radar gun. It's like embarrassing.
It's pathetic. I mean, I'll give Verlander a little bit of a pass, even though, he came out and just let up bombs right away to really help.
Javi Baez, of all people, of course, it has to be Javi Baez, right, in the first inning, guys?
But let me good cue, Tom, because let me pick on his buddy who deserves to be picked on today, and that is Francisco Lindor. Yep. He is culprit number 1 on my list right now. You're batting .213? Really? You're batting .213. Now, the reason he's not probably the biggest guy I'm going to pick on is because at least he has 24 RBIs. That was
last year. He had a bunch of RBIs and the batting average was low. It's a common theme with Lindor.
But the batting average was at least somewhat respectable. 270, 280, at least somewhat respectable, right? 213, I mean, what are you trying to chase Nito down? You trying to chase Tomas Nito down? Because, you go 100 points down, you can get to Nito. All right? Listen, and the other guy that needs to be picked on, because these two guys are supposed to be the catalyst in the lineup, Tom Bryce, it's Lindor and it's Marte. Yep. Marte is batting .218. He has 1 home run and 8 RBIs. That is horrible. Horrible. He has more stolen bases than RBIs. Horrible. So, listen, these two who bat 2 and 3 in your lineup cannot produce anything. They're barely hitting 200, right? And on top of that, you can't pitch, right? Some of your bullpen guys haven't even been great. Okay, you got Jimmy Yacobonis showing up and pitching better.
Dominic Leone is supposed to be the godsend of this bullpen right
now. I mean, who are these guys? Listen, we're supposed to be a team that's supposed to be competing, as we mentioned, Tom, as you mentioned, for a championship. We're supposed to be a win-now team, and we're throwing out Jimmy Yacobonis and Tommy Hunter and other garbage guys that never heard of.
Fred came back on Monday. I mean, Steven Nagosic might save the bullpen.
Listen, we like Steven Nagosic, but please, listen, this is an atrocity. I am pissed with this team. I haven't even watched the last few games, and I'm glad I didn't watch the games.
I was by the way, tonight. I mean, I knew what was going on, but, I was like, I'm just not going to go give that up to watch.
And please, don't give me this nonsense about woohoo, we won tonight. Great. You won. 1-0. What? I mean, against the Rockies. And again, all these teams the Mets are about to play, Tom, right? The Nationals they're playing again, right? I think they're playing the Reds coming up. They're playing all these bad teams, and they can't beat them. That is horrible, and that is a recipe for disaster. And listen, I'm not going to go as far to Justin Gianelli saying that they're not going to make the playoffs. But if they can't beat some of these damn teams, right, coming up that are weak, I might have to go with Justin next week and join the train because this is horrible.
Well, you know what? There is a point, and I got a bunch of comments here because people definitely are fired up to hear this. But, I mean, and I'm going to get to the Yankees. I have a lot to talk about with the Yankees with Crest, which I know is kind of almost the same kind of news here. But, I mean, they're in a cluster jam here of all these teams like the Phillies, the Marlins, the Padres, the Dodgers, the D-backs, and all these teams. It's going to be like, it looks like 84, 85 wins is going to get you into a wild card this year, the way these teams are kind of bunched up. So, unfortunately, this is where the Mets are here, but I'm going to get to the Yankees in a second, but I do have comments. Anthony Finkel, 420. It's Cinco de Mayo. I know it's Revenge of the Fifth. That I know, but I figured 420 would wake you up because that's probably, what was going on. Yes, he celebrates 420. I don't say we celebrate. You may celebrate 420 every day, but that's fine. Norman Black would like to respond. He says, oh, no, Brute. He has told me so much about you. I can confirm nor deny that. I am pleased to inform you, though, that we are honorary members of the House of Wolves. So the House of Wolves and the IMF, Brad, it's basically they're kind of the premier group, the gang kind of the Iowa Midwestern Wrestling Federation. They hold most of the championships there, and they have a big show coming up on May the 27th. And next Sunday, in a kind of way, we'll talk about that here. And Omen also wants to add, all you have to do is take his hand and walk down the path. Craven and Forsaken will make the walk by the foot. Those are a couple of wrestlers he was referring to, so you can kind of, maybe check that out one day. And before I get to Chris, John Gonzalez, speaking of forces, speaking of giants that have come in here, says, good evening, guys. I would like to give a shout-out to my friend Jordan from Herrick's. So there you go there, Brad, just for you. John Gonzalez from the Sports Authorities Group has said hello.
John, I mean, you really got to start the night with this comment. I mean, I was trying to get John going early on in the show. He didn't respond to me when I was saying.
You know what it is? I think Randy opens it. We kind of talk about different things, and you guys come on here, and the way baseball is in this town right now, that's people.
With that being said, listen. All right, Jordan from Herrick's, really? That's who you're saying hello to? I mean, come on, man. Like, listen, we don't need to talk about no Herrick's. How about we talk about the Mets, who stink? And how about Chris talk about the Yankees, who are not much better right now?
All right, I'll go into John's comment here a little bit. Chris, I am getting a little worried about this Yankees team for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the first one is that the news about Carlos Rodon, and I'm not sure where we go with that. And they're playing this Tampa Bay Rays team, which has just been on an unbelievable run here. They've outscored their opponents by 115 runs total. They've got the most home runs in the major leagues. They've got the lowest ERA. They got 4 guys hitting 320. And I was, kind of feeling better about the Yankees beating the Guardians. But, I mean, playing this Rays team, it's kind of like a bad luck here. But looking at this division where they are, just in the standings, I mean, the Yankees are in last place right now, and it's really not their fault because this division's just been so good. And the Boston Red Sox, I think, have been big surprises. Baltimore has played a little bit better even than maybe we thought at the start of the season. But, I mean, I don't know now. I mean, I was listening to Aaron Boone, some of his comments going into the game, and, I just don't know what to say. And we have to talk about the New York Yankees, unfortunately, because they're also pretty much in the same boat as the Mets are.
And you know what? Before I get to the Yankees, with the Mets, you guys got to just think positive. Stay with the confidence angle here because you guys are still in the race. You're not out of it yet. You're going to make the playoffs, right? Because think about it. Marte and Lindor, all these guys, they're going to start hitting. They're not going to be this bad for this long, right? They're bound to turn it around. I'm concerned along with you guys with Scherzer. I'm very concerned with that guy. I don't know. That doesn't look so good. Verlander looked okay, right? It's only his first start. Let's not get too crazy, right?
And
first
listen, I'm not as extreme as Brad is with the lineup. I do think the lineup is going to be fine in the long run. I'm just that worried about the pitching that I think it's going to end badly this year.
But here's the other thing too, right? In another month or so, when teams start talking trades, you guys said it. You guys have the position players down in the minors that you can trade. I know you don't want to give certain guys up, but
if you're in a position with this net, which I think is a win now team,
maybe get an arm or two, a starting pitcher or a relief pitcher to kind of help out. That might help things out. So that's the way I look at it.
How about getting a designated hitter?
I think that might come from within, though.
I agree with Justin.
Eventually call it Mark Vientos.
Yeah.
There's a guy in the Giants that's pretty good, right? Darren Ruff. He's pretty good.
You had to bring that.
Why did you have to say that? Why?
Just to get you
know
going.
Why he said that? Because the Yankees are actually going to get some help also coming up here because I'm going to try to give the Yankees some confidence here in a second before I let Chris speak because Judge is coming back by Monday. Stanton looks like he's coming back the following week so that there is some help. Cole gets on the mound Sunday. So, I mean, is that at least some steps for the Yankees here? I know I kind of asked the question in a different way, but maybe with some of these moves, maybe that can help the Yankees here a little bit. Because like I said, I mean, they're in last place, but it's really not as if they play like the Cardinals. Just that division's just been somebody has to come back to earth. I would have to think in the AL East, right?
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay is going to come a little bit back to earth, but I still think they're a really good team, right? The last, I think, 5 years, they've had the highest winning percentage in the regular season. So This is not that much of a shocker that they're playing. I mean, they're playing really, really good, but they're a really good team. It's as simple as that. So I'm not expecting them to come down too down to earth, but
you look at it like the Orioles are 22-10. They've been hot, right? Toronto gets a win over Pittsburgh. Okay, so Toronto bounces back. They had been on a losing streak. Boston beats the Phillies, of course, our beloved Phillies.
Boston's the biggest surprise, I think, out of this whole
they've got 7 wins in a row. I mean, do we really think Boston's going to be a team that, maybe they win 87, 88 games and they're off to a better start than expected? Their lineup's been hitting really well. I mean, you and Patrick have talked about them.
I can see them being right around 500 and, being in the kind of like last year, being in the mix for the wild card. And let's see if they don't fall apart. Like last year, they kind of fell apart at the end. But maybe if they could keep it together, they'll be in the mix for the wild card for the whole season. And the Yankees, like you said, Judge is going to come back Monday. And listen, Judge has to be. He's obviously not going to hit 62 home runs because he's already missed a couple of weeks. But he's got to get this team on his back, and he's got to carry this team now. It's as simple as that because the offense is going absolutely nowhere. The pitching is okay, and I think it's done a good job. But when you're scoring 2 runs a game, you're not going to win many games, and that's what they've been doing. So I think Judge has to be that catalyst to carry the team like he did last year. Without Judge last year, we're probably not in the playoffs. So he's got to have that kind of a season, not 62, but he's got to carry this team. And Stanton's coming back and hopefully in another week or so. Sevy's got 2 more rehab starts. That would be huge because that'll help out the pitching even more. But it is what it is. For at least another month, nobody's going to trade, right? Like I said, the Mets.
I don't even think people. So today's May 5th. I mean,
probably not till the end of June.
That was exactly my point because now you've played basically about a fifth of the season, right? So if you take a step back, let's say the end of June puts you at basically 80, 85 games. That's when you start thinking about it. I mean, people don't really start assessing the calendar till Memorial Day. Now, the extra wild card I definitely think helps the Yankees a little bit. They'll be in it. I mean, I still don't buy Boston. I just don't buy Boston being.
Yeah, I think they're going to hang around. I think they're going to hang around. They're not going to, compete for the division, but I think they'll hang around for the wild card. With nobody else really running away with, like Minnesota's playing good in the Central, but nobody else in the Central is playing that good.
The White Sox are terrible. I mean, they might be one of the worst teams that everybody thought would be great, and they've been certainly another underachieving season. Detroit, we spoke about. Kansas City stinks. And you've got in the West, I mean, the Angels, do you buy them? They're playing over 500. All right, you got Houston, had some tough news earlier in the day, but you have to expect they come back. You've got Seattle. It's been a little bit disappointing. And you've got
probably Texas. Bounce back to Seattle. But Seattle got bad news too, right? So I listen, that's why it's still early. You know what? In a few weeks, Memorial Day, if we're still talking like this, we are now. Yeah, I'll start to get worried for sure. But the Yankees and the Mets, they're going to bounce back. They're going to bounce back. I'm not saying division,
around. Yeah, I think they'll hang around. Maybe in the AL East, you look at Baltimore and say, all right, you know what, Baltimore, all right, they've got 22 wins. It's been a carryover of the second half of last season. All right, so maybe you put them in the playoffs. We thought maybe they would be on the bubble anyway. Tampa, I mean, they're 27-6, and again, there's no way that Tampa's not making the playoffs. They're going to certainly go and win at least 90-plus games, even if they play 500 the rest of the year. And interesting note here that Tampa, before I move on here, quickest to 20 games over 500 since the 1984 Detroit Tigers. So if you take a step back, nobody's been on the run. Not even the 98 Yankees, 01 Mariners, last year's Yankee team. You think about some teams that have won 100-plus games, and they're the ones, and they got 4 players hitting over 320 going into today, and the Yankees even miss some of the big aces in the Rays rotation, yet here they are. So I still think at the end of the day, the Yankees do kind of bounce back here. But I do briefly, before I want to talk about the Mets in a second, in a sense, in a past tense, I do have some comments here. John Gonzalez goes on here about he wants to see the Brute Force and the Killer Rabbit, but the Killer Rabbit is in past tense. I don't think he's in WC anymore. So that's something that we'll talk about during the week with the Wrestling Championship Entertainment crew. So Brad, you get spared on that. And John Gonzalez, who wants to talk about a Herrick's kind of quote here. Do you guys know what the Yankees were called before they became the Yankees?
Highlanders?
Yeah.
Highlanders.
And that's what he had. That's kind of what the running.
Because Herrick's is the Highlanders. Oh, really?
Exactly.
This guy's really playing with Herrick's. He should be the new president or whatever, as principal of the school. That should be John Gonzalez.
Are you saying he went to Herrick's or something? Is that what it is, you think?
At this point, he might as well be an alumni. I mean, this guy talks more about Herrick's than anybody I've ever heard. So, listen, I'm giving you credit, John. All right, you want to rip me about what I've done to Herrick's? I will give you some help in becoming the principal of the school if you really want it.
Well, we'll certainly have to find out about that. But, there was some news, I guess, in the past tense, which I'll bring up here for a few minutes, and I'll talk about a few general thoughts on the MLB, then I'll move on to the other sports. But obviously there was news about Matt Harvey has announced his retirement here, and I guess unceremoniously in a way, if you think about it. Obviously, he had so much promise and certainly had some moments for Mets fans, but did not have the career that he probably should have had here several years back. And Rob Maraska, a name that we've talked about quite a bit over the past nearly 5 years on Sportswire, is Matt Harvey, the ex-Mets phenom and all-star, has announced that he is no longer going to continue his journey in the game of baseball. So give me your impressions on Matt Harvey, the former Dark Knight, is now that he has announced his retirement from Major League Baseball.
If you think about it, it is kind of sad, underachiever. We thought he was going to be great. We thought we had one of the great ones. And, he went out. He didn't go out with a bang, that's for sure. His record was 50-66 with a 4.42 ERA for his career.
Wow, that's it. 50 wins. He only won 50
that
games.
after his start. He was 2-0 in the postseason for the Mets, but we know what happened in that Game 5 against Kansas City, so we don't even want to think about that or remember that anymore. He started the 2013 All-Star game, but you know what? He fizzled. For a couple of years, he was like everybody wanted to see Matt Harvey pitch. He brought people into Citi Field. And it was excitement again, and then it just died. He had the Tommy John surgery, but that was even before the 2015 season.
Yeah, he bounced back though. I mean, obviously in the regular season of 15, he was very good for the Mets. I mean, he was definitely a big part of the rotation for the success of the team, leading us into the World Series.
Yeah, but then after that World Series and what happened in Game 5, he just went downhill pretty fast, And there was off the field stuff too. I don't know. I just feel when I think about it, what could have been, and it wasn't. And it's funny. He pitched pretty good in the World Baseball Classic for Italy. He was 1-0 and he had a 1.29 ERA. And the Long Island Ducks wanted him to pitch this year for them, and he just didn't want to go down like Murphy. He didn't want to pull a Murphy and play for the Ducks.
It was Murphy and somebody else from the Mets, also from the 2015. I think it was his. Trying to think, was it not Juan Uribe? It was somebody else that they actually brought in also.
Is it Ruben Zahavi?
That's it. There you go. That's the name.
Ruben Zahavi. Right.
Yes. So it's a sad ending to what could have been a really, really great career.
Yeah, you think about that, right? Before we get to everybody else, 50 wins. He only won 50 games in the majors. You think about Matt Harvey, right? This was a big name, right, for a couple of years. And, people talk about Doc Gooden and what if and what that. But Doc Gooden still won like almost 200 games, right? I mean, so the guy still wins almost 200 games. So his career was still really good. I mean, he still had a lot of, really good seasons. But Matt Harvey only wins 50 games in the major leagues. For all that hype, all that talk, 50 wins. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. It's, and then you think about it. He went on the pitch for the Angels, for Cincinnati, for Kansas City. He went from the Mets and then he was nothing. And, so he called it quits today. That's it. Done.
What he became then, before I get to the rest of the guys and more comments, is the boxing term, a journeyman. He basically became a journeyman. Basically, he could have been a heavyweight champion. He could have been this. He could have been that. But 50-66 with a 4.42 ERA. And you think about really after he left the Mets. I mean, 11.57 ERA with the Royals, 7 ERA with the Angels. Cincinnati, 4.5 ERA. All right, that was okay that 1 year. But Baltimore, 6-14 with a 6.27 ERA. I mean, just awful numbers here. And before I get to the rest of the guys on this here, and John Gonzalez is going on about wrestling. He wants Brad to go into the wrestling world, but Brad has already answered that, so I'll move on from that. Matt Harvey will be known as the pitcher who was left in one inning too long. Absolutely. Going back to 2015 World Series for sure. Matt Harvey, another what if. I think it also goes back to what Justin's question was last week and guys who could have been what ifs. I mean, maybe Matt Harvey's a name that we could have added to that list. And Harvey should pitch for Oakland. Nobody would watch.
I don't think anybody wants to pitch for Oakland at this point.
Well, I mean, did anybody say that they were offering like a really record deal for tickets? I think it was like 24 games for like $90 or something like that, $99. I read that somewhere. I was like, wow, they're really.
Wow. And they're probably box seats too.
Actually, you know what? I believe the tickets were like actually down lower in the field, so they were like really good seats. But
Wow.
I mean, Brad, what do you think about Matt Harvey? I mean, Matt Harvey, again, so much promise, right? For those of us like myself, Justin, that was certainly coming up, we were young, we were watching this Mets team in 2015, 2016, even before that with Matt Harvey, and then it ends and Rob Moroska says 50 and 66. I mean, almost sounds like, I hate to say it, like he was a bum. Not even a what if, but like a bum. 50 and 66. I mean, I interviewed Glendon Rush, and Glendon Rush, I believe, was like 66 and 99, and he had a better career, frankly, than Matt Harvey. And you would never have said, oh, Glendon Rush had a better career than Matt Harvey. And I'm not trying to knock Glendon Rush. It was an honor to have the guy on. I mean, the guy pitched, 13 years in the major leagues, but that was basically the definition of a journeyman. But Matt Harvey, almost have to say it, like a bum. I mean, what do you make of Matt Harvey announcing his retirement and just his career? I mean, what a whimper. I have to say it after hearing those stats.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, as Rob said, very disappointing. Definitely upsetting. I can't deny it, Tom. I mean, he definitely is going to go down as a not a great pitcher for his career. I guess you want to go as far as bum. I guess that's kind of
66 with a 4.42 ERA for a guy that dominated the New York tabloids here for what, 3 years?
But I will say this. I will say this. He will not go down as a New York Mets bum. I think that we will still remember. I mean, he was a big part of that team that got to the World Series in 2015. That will not be forgotten. I think a lot of people will give him the benefit of the doubt for that run and obviously what he did. He was the ace of that pitching staff in 2015. Obviously, things fell over, and he made a big mistake by the Mets put him in the bullpen. He was kind of pissed with his role. I got my Harvey jersey somewhere too, but listen, he got pissed with his role when they moved him to the bullpen, and the worst thing he did was leave. I think that the Mets were trying to help him kind of resurrect himself, try to put him in a different role. He didn't want to hear it, and as you said, Tom, all the teams you mentioned were low tier teams. I mean, you talk about Kansas City, the Orioles,
the Reds, the Royals. I mean,
he never got to play on a competitive team again, and I think he kind of maybe took it for granted that was potentially the road that he was going to live. But like I said, when it comes to the Mets and his career as a Met, it is not a bum type performance. I think he had a great few years. Again, it's very significant for a franchise that has not gotten to the World Series many times to have a guy who led you there and was the ace of the team. That won't be forgotten. It's not like, I hate to say it, it's not like the Yankees where they're just used to getting to the World Series over and over again. When the Mets get to the World Series, the players that performed will be remembered. And I think Matt Harvey will be remembered for that run, and that gives him at least something to be proud of. But when it comes to his career as a whole, Tom, no, I can't disagree with you. He was horrible as his career. But it is important, though, that when he said he was retiring, he definitely gave credit to Mets fans and New York people. I think that tells you really the best part of his career and how much it meant to be a Met. And when he knows, right, that really that was the cream and crop of his career, and he did do well while he was here for the most part.
Well, he won 34 games as a Met. He won 50 the rest of his career. So if you take a step back, obviously, that would make sense. And I'll get to Justin in a second. But John Gonzalez had a great one here. Harvey reminds me of Lynn Sanity. Yeah, you think about it, right? Like that moment. For that moment, he was great, right? But the rest of that career...
I see where John's coming from, but the only difference is obviously that Jeremy Lin did it in the regular season. Matt Harvey did it on the biggest stage. Yes,
but I think what he's saying is fair.
Multiple years.
Yeah, but I think the moment, though, that moment in time, Harvey captivated the city, right? Yeah. He captivated New York, and Lynn did that. Now, I agree Harvey might have did it a little longer, like 2 years, but the point is kind of fair. Harvey was 2015 he was good, so you got to give him 2. It's like there was a special years ago.
Honestly, I'll give him 3. I mean, he was a hit when he came up in 2012.
Yeah, but he wasn't here long. But you want to give him 2 full years.
He came up in July, but still, he pitched from July on.
Sure. I agree. I think he deserves 3 years of credit.
I do have a great memory of sitting next to Rob as Matt won a game for us live after some dude You got to talk about this. What happened here? I hope the guy didn't die. His pants were too low. Like, what happened here, Rob Morosky?
His pants were too low.
He had too many of those $12 brewskis, and
The tall boys, right? That's what they call them, right?
yeah, and he did fall about 10 rows. Me and Joe Dell, I took Joe Dell to that game. That's right. Harvey pitched a great game, but the guy did fall about 10 rows down.
Oh my God. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen to anybody else there. But that's a unfortunate story. But Justin, I want to get to Chris in a second, but I see you there. I'm assuming it's the Matt Harvey jersey. So, I mean, you have to share your thoughts and kind of, I guess, in a way, it kind of ends his career on a whimper. I mean, if you would have said to us, right, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, that Matt Harvey would have had 50 career wins and been a journeyman, I think we all would have said, like, 420 day, right? Anthony Finkel and 420 would have been that. We would have said you want something, but that's his career, and it's really categorically a huge disappointment.
Yeah, no doubt. And I take you back to 2013. So I went to it's fitting the Mets are playing the Rockies this weekend. It was a August night against the Colorado Rockies at Citi Field, and Matt Harvey throws his first career complete game shutout. And you could just feel how he captivated the crowd even then. Because at that point, because when he came up in 2012, he was the main attraction, right? I know Dickey ended up having that Cy Young year in 2012 where he won 20 games. But the Mets were a bad team in 2012. They were a bad team in 2013. And it was really an event, Harvey Day, because there really wasn't much to look forward to.
No, it was a bad team.
And I'll also never forget in 2013 that doubleheader against the Braves where he started one game and Zach Wheeler started the other. And I think that might have even been Wheeler's debut, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just for that window from July of 2012 to the 2015 World Series, I mean, you couldn't have dreamt of a better start besides the Tommy John surgery, which was unfortunately interrupting the 13 year, and he missed all of 14. And then to see him struggle in 2016 and then have the thoracic outlet syndrome, and to just see the fall of his career, and some of the off the field issues, it really is sad, because he was somebody who came up with so much talent, so much promise, and gave the fans a reason to show up at the ballpark when otherwise there was really no reason to show up at Citi Field, and I'll never have a bad word about Matt, because for me, as somebody who was in college at the time, been a Mets fan since 1999, it's really one of the more captivating moments, that 2015 World Series, and him going back out there for the ninth inning, and just that feeling, whether you were in the ballpark or watching the game at home like I was, that's, even though it didn't work out, that's still a moment that's gonna, really live on forever. And, it's unfortunate and sad that, it ended this poorly for Matt. It really is.
You guys didn't see Harvey. Yeah, he brought something back where he brought people in the ballpark, like they would say Friday nights. You guys didn't get to see it. Well, Chris, yes, but when Dwight Gooden pitched for the Mets at Shea Stadium on Friday nights, it usually was always a Friday night. It was an event. We would go to all the Friday night games, and Shea Stadium was packed with over 50,000 people, and it was an event. And Harvey started out like that. He brought that back, but it just didn't last as long.
Yeah, it just
still.
go ahead.
I was gonna say I still have my shirt that says Happy Harvey Day on it because it was an event to see the Dark Knight. By the way, if you remember, he was the Dark Knight.
I remember. Listen, I actually got. There was my brother's now wife gave me a World Series shirt with Harvey on it, but I never. I think I wore it once because I was like, after what happened with him, I was like almost like, am I going to be jinxed by wearing the shirt? And I just unfortunately never wore it afterwards. I was like so like jinxed. I almost felt after what happened with him, and then even afterwards with his career, and kind of a bummer. Again, you talk about Doc Gooden, but Doc Gooden still won like 190 plus games. So you look at his career, yeah, okay, but he still won that many games. But this guy Harvey wins just 50 games, and all kidding aside, yeah, he had a lot. He had so many problems. I mean, he had
It
a
was
lot.
really the thoracic outlet syndrome that
That
really
kind of set the wheels in motion.
Viral, and because you think about what Steven Strasburg's been dealing with the last couple of years, ever since he got the surgery. We've barely even seen him on the mound, and he's tied to a massive contract.
And that's where the Nationals, you think about it, they've kind of had their kind of a team decline here. And obviously, again, only, I guess, positive was, well, Harvey did make $28 million, according to Baseball Reference. So that's, I guess, the one positive. So maybe he ain't feeling too bad. But and John Gonzalez, before I get to you, Chris, says Doc would have won 300 if it wasn't for the coke. Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely, we would be talking about Doc Gooden in a different category, but certainly Doc's career compared to Matt Harvey is it's still 190 plus wins, and
you can't even compare the two.
The longevity is not even in question. I mean, Doc did it for much longer. Obviously Matt was more of a shorter spurt, and obviously he also pitched in an era where wins have become less common, but also he did it for a much shorter spurt. Doc was, at least Doc 7, 8 years. 7, 8 years.
And you know what?
I mean, go ahead, jump in.
I was just going to say that the difference between the two, and maybe just Harvey couldn't because he had all the shoulder and the arm issues, was that Doc figured it out, right? He reinvented himself into a different kind of pitcher. For a while, when he first came up, he had that, the great fastball and incredible curveball. Then he couldn't, just blow people away with his fastball anymore. So he had to learn how to, pitch more than throw. So I think with Harvey, maybe he wasn't able to do that, and when his velocity dropped,
be the biggest issue because, he even did pitch well for Italy in the World Baseball Classic this year. But one of the things he's even noted was his velocity was still significantly down. I mean, and significantly down from where it was the last couple of years, which is already down from what we had gotten accustomed to from him. And if you're sitting at 88 to 90, I mean, you better have great stuff,
right.
or
no way,
you're going to be a pinata.
You better have pinpoint control.
About Scherzer, pretty much. We're worried about that here, and John also wants to
add
at
least Scherzer's at 92, 93 miles an hour.
True, no, definitely. I think Harvey's
not going to last. That he still has to have better command of his other pitches because 93, 94 is going to look really easy to hit. And that's what's happening now.
Listen, 100 is hittable if it's right down the middle. It really is.
Absolutely.
No, listen, absolutely. Anything else you want to add, Chris, on a Matt Harvey? Obviously, you think about just the New York media. He definitely, I would say, captivated the audience here for, I would say, about a good, 3.5 years. Pretty much, he was definitely a perennial name, and the back pages here, even in the front pages at times. Page 6 used to see him in, whether it was the Daily News or the Post, or But unfortunately, his career comes to a halt here, pretty much at this point.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. He was definitely their biggest player there for a couple of years. And like you said, it was an event. It actually reminded me of the whole Doc Gooden, like Rob said, it was an event when he pitched. It was like, oh, great, he's pitching,
Harvey Day. I remember that. Harvey Day was the team.
And then it's sad, it's a guy that had so much potential, and it just didn't, just didn't pan out after those couple of years because of the injuries, and he just couldn't figure it out on how to pitch with reduced velocity.
I think
one thing I'll also point out is not just was he an event because he was ours and he was our best at that time. He was also a local kid too.
Connecticut,
He's from Mystic, Connecticut, And so, New York City is just a stone's throw away. And, you know, whether it's, his family would be able to come, friends would be able to come and, get to support somebody who's, from a reasonable distance, to New York, to the proximity of New York City. And I think that was another big factor as well.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't obviously a Lee Mazzelli or a John Franco, but it was
No,
still
not that close, but
yeah.
still, Mystic, Connecticut is still a short
No,
drive.
absolutely. Listen, they
from
can
New
get
York
to the
City.
ballpark. Yeah, absolutely.
And he definitely took advantage of the nightlife of New York City, and
yeah,
right.
Well, that's I personally think, which was my point, was I actually think that's where his career really. I know the injuries hurt, but I think he kind of did himself in because he was kind of such a off the field. He indulged himself, and I think he hurt himself in the public eye. And Met fans who were starved for winners kind of saw his own behavior at times, and I think he certainly self-destructed.
Remember the controversy about the innings limit in 2015.
Yep.
We weren't sure if he was going to pitch in the postseason because of the self-imposed innings limit, and everybody was like, "Okay, well, why? If that's the case, then why didn't you shut him down until May and then bring him back in May, and then that way, if the Mets go on a postseason run, he's not going to blow past the innings limit. He ends up still pitching. He blows past the innings limit, and look what happens."
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, at the end of the day, there was a lot of things, and we can go down memory lane here when it comes to his career, but it does end here at 50-66 with a 4.42 ERA, and he's 34 years old, so we'll see what he does with the rest of his life here. And a few other news and notes when it comes to Major League Baseball and some underachieving teams. I mentioned Cardinals, 10-22, last place, latest in the season for the first time since 1976. Worst start since 73. White Sox, 10-22. They were 3-15 tonight since Tim Anderson had been out of the lineup. So they were bad before then, but even worse since then. Pirates, 20-13, off to a great start. I've lost 5 in a row, though, so maybe they're coming back to earth a little bit. Marlins, 500 here. We're 10-0 in one-run games. So the Marlins have actually played really well in these close games. Maybe that's kind of helped them as a sign of things to come, although they do fall under 500 tonight here with a loss. Boston, 7 straight wins. Patrick Trotty going to be a happy man right now, 20-14. Blue Jays were on a 5-game losing streak, but that does end here tonight. Orioles 22-10, like I said, have continued the momentum here. Also, Clayton Kershaw. Speaking of guys going down memory lane, he's going the other way. He was 5-1 going in tonight with a 1.9 ERA. Joe Musgrove, who was on the mound for the Padres, though, was off to an abominable start with a 10.8 ERA. Chris Sale with a 6. I had it. Yeah, I had it. So I had it. Maybe that they changed it because I had it going into Friday that Musgrove was in the rotation. Maybe they changed that before game time.
Pitch tonight,
but that's what I had. That Chris Sale is 2-2 with a 6.75 ERA, but his last 3 starts had pitched a little better going into tonight. And also, John Gonzalez, his latest hot take, has Chapman going back to the Cubs from the Royals. Maybe. I guess that could be a possibility. Things here we'll certainly see. But Rob Maraska, I'm going to give you the floor and some closing thoughts because I want to get to a couple of news and notes quickly on the NFL. Then I want to get to Brad Weiss and Dolan time before we close out. Because I actually got a lot of notes for Brad on the Knicks, but I have a couple of NFL stories which I do want to get to locally. But want to give you the floor, Rob, and anything else you want to share. Say the Harvey topic turned out to actually be an interesting one. Spent a little more time than we would have thought, but maybe it actually invoked some good thoughts here in conversation. So I want to give you the floor, some closing thoughts. And I didn't realize this until about a few minutes ago. I thought you had headphones on, but it's actually a cross. So I thought you actually had headphones on there. But that could be, yeah. That could be me seeing things because I'm still just getting used to my vision because I saw Guardians of the Galaxy in 3D, not regular. So that could be on me. But I give you the floor. Any closing thoughts, anything else you want to share, say, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, just real quick, one last thing with Matt Harvey. I think also, I think he appreciates the Met fans now more than he did when he was leaving the team.
Fair point.
So I was happy with what he came out with today. That was really good, and I respect him for that.
Right.
One other quick thing I want to say to Chris, the way the Yankees are going, when are we going to start hearing about Booney and the fans wanting to lynch him up again?
Oh,
Well, the line
they
he used
wanted him fired 2 years ago. So
I know.
Trust me,
but
it's
the line he used about like everything and everything, it was like he used like a bizarre quote to kind of talk about like the Yankees going into the game today. It was like just you kind of a head scratching kind of quote, just bizarre.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
some of his moves have been bizarre this year so far.
Well, that's true.
but anyway, okay, guys. Great show again, guys. My pleasure. If anyone wants to reach me on Twitter, it's R. Maraska on Twitter and Rob Maraska on Facebook. Another great show, and looking forward to talking to you guys next week.
Absolutely, and great stuff. And I actually did formal show prep for the first time in Major League Baseball, so I'm up to date on baseball. So we'll certainly, as in the coming weeks, we'll have a lot more baseball talk because obviously the locals won't be in the postseason forever, and that'll be baseball front and center. So all great stuff there. And Joe Dell tells me 3D is the only way. Yeah, well, if you're going to see Guardians of the Galaxy, if you're a Marvel fan, that's the only way to see that movie. But I won't spoil it, but you can check that out. But great stuff, Rob, and we'll definitely share some of these clips on Twitter. They always get a lot of reactions, and I'll talk with you soon, champ.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, that was Rob Maraska here, our longest tenured analyst. And before I get to Dolan time, I wanted to get to two quick notes here in the NFL. The first is that the Buffalo Bills are going to get a new stadium here in 2026. It's a 60,000 seat, $1.54 billion stadium that has been approved by the county legislature there in Erie. And so we'll see if the Bills finally, I mean, they've got one of the oldest stadiums.
A little light. 60,000?
60,000. I got 60,000.
That seems a little light for the NFL.
Well, what do you think about that? I mean, 60,000 seats. Buffalo finally gets. I mean, they've got one of the most oldest stadiums in the league, and I mean, we've seen constant chatter about this. And
is it a dome? I think it's a dome too, isn't it?
I believe there's
I think it's partial.
Yeah, I was gonna say
like a retractable roof.
I have retractable. My news and notes here has it retractable.
Hey, that it might still make it tough because the weather is that bad, but it does potentially open up the Super Bowl to Orchard Park.
I don't know if that city can handle it.
It might be so bad weather-wise. It's going to be tough to have Super Bowl week. I
don't know if that city can handle it.
I'm a New Yorker through and through. And Brad, we were on Tuesday with James D. Simone. We were talking about Florida and New York. When we stay in New York, when we go to Florida, I'm a New Yorker through and through. Everybody who knows me, I've got family that have left New York, friends that have left New York, and they always tell me, you're the one guy that's always going to be a New Yorker, never. But I would even say for the Super Bowl in Buffalo, I don't think I would be something I would do. Now, I'm a diehard New Yorker.
I do know one thing. That stadium better be named Josh Allen Stadium. That's for sure. Because they're not getting the stadium without Josh Allen. Because Josh Allen is the reason why this franchise is turned around.
Yeah, well, they still got to win. They got to still win.
They got to win.
They got to still
Right?
win something, though. They haven't even got to the Jim Kelly level. But I see the point. Now, listen, there's no question that we do that. And Brian, any thoughts on that? The Bills' new stadium and Bills' Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know if I would like to see Buffalo based on that weather. Maybe. But what do you say?
Well, first I'll say the obvious, Tom Brights, because we know that we have a big Buffalo fan on this show that's been here, Sydney Mountain from Five Towns. We know she's thrilled about this.
Oh, I'm sure. She's probably there right now. She's probably going to put the hard hat on, and she's going to probably put the construction boots on and probably help with the shovel and everything else.
Potentially, and we know she loves her Buffalo Bills, so I'm sure she's happy about that. With that being said, yeah, I think it's a great move by Buffalo, and I think it was much needed, as you said, Tom, one of the more outdated stadiums. I wouldn't go as far to compare it to the Oakland Coliseum, but I would say that it is.
Brad, nothing can be bad.
Nothing can be as bad as that. That's as bad as it gets. I mean, listen, some facilities that I've seen at Division III schools are way better than that. So anyway, listen, it is a good move by Buffalo. I think it's much needed. This is a team, like you said, Tom, that has had recent success. That has a great fan base. They really do. The mafia up there, they definitely support their team. They love their Bills, so they deserve a better stadium. I think it's good that they have it. I think as Jets fans, I think it's good, because a lot of Jets fans like to go see the team in Buffalo. So to have a new stadium to go to is great.
Michael's been up in Buffalo. I know he's went there in the past, so we've had some fun.
So I think it's a win-win for everybody. I think it's a great move. With that being said, obviously we all know, Justin, that'll be named in some sort of sponsorship because you ain't getting a new stadium and not getting a sponsor on there. You need the money. But I do understand Justin's point that it needs to be, something needs to be for Josh Allen because this is the guy that's turned the franchise around. With that being said, though, this is a really big year for him. I mean, he was just bounced out by Joe Burrow. The team kind of, I know they had a good draft. I like Kincaid and I like a few other moves that they've made. But this is a big year. I mean, they got the Jets chomping at them now. They got Miami. If Tua is healthy, could be potentially back in the race with them. Listen, so they are they're going to have a challenge. This is not no easy AFC East win. I mean, anymore.
No.
This is going to be a challenge. So, they got to win to get those seats filled for that stadium in the next couple of years. So this is a big year for Buffalo. And we're still going to believe in them to be one of the top teams in the AFC, but that's not a guarantee. There's a lot of good teams.
No, absolutely. And before I get to Chris here, Crackstaff have given us these notes. It'll be a 242-acre site. It'll cover approximately 1.35 million square feet. It'll be the biggest project ever built in Western New York. It'll be the construction of a 75,000 square foot ancillary building, and demolition for the current stadium will also be a part of the site's related development. Completion is scheduled for July 2026, and the project itself will start later this year. And the legislature has approved that, so that has already been done. So we're looking at June is when the project will start.
That was going to be my question. So the stadium is being built basically in the parking lot of the current stadium.
Correct.
And the current stadium will become the extra parking lot.
Absolutely, yes, correct. Yes,
Okay.
So that's what will wind up
So
happening
keeping it on site, which is good. Keep it in that neighborhood.
And John Gonzalez says the Bills are getting the stadium because Hochul gave them the money. Well, it's actually the Erie County. And this one, I'm actually going to give you a slight fact check. It's the Erie County Legislature. They're the ones that actually have to sign off on that. So, but this case is different. Yeah. And whereas in Vegas, it's the governor there that actually signed off. So sometimes there is those differences. But the point is taken, John. But Chris, I mean, Buffalo gets a new stadium. You have a thought about that before I ask you about the Giants news? Because the Giants actually made a quick news and note here this week.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. They needed a new stadium. I mean, their stadium,
absolutely,
compared to the other stadiums in the league, it's just not up to par.
I remember like 20 years ago, Orchard Park was old then. I mean, imagine it now, right? I mean,
so imagine now, compared to some of these new, like the Vegas stadium that went up and LA stadium, and it's so antiquated right now. So, they definitely needed a new one, and I think. And now you got Chicago going to do the same thing, right? They're going to build a new stadium.
Soldier and Lambeau have to be like the two oldest fields left, right?
They purchased land in Arlington Park in Illinois, where they would be building the site of a new Bears stadium.
And you know what? I think that one's going to have a roof too, right?
Current Bill Stadium is better than MetLife Stadium.
Oh boy, we're going to poke the tiger there, I guess.
I mean,
but you know what? It kind of
stadium is arguably one of the worst stadiums in the league.
Probably in like 15 years from now, probably. Yeah, I probably agree.
Yeah, boring and dull.
I think it's smart. I think it's smart to put the roofs up. I know it sucks because it takes away that kind of home field advantage for Buffalo and Chicago with the weather. But it's better. I think it's a better fan experience because you really don't want to sit through 10 below weather or 10 degrees. Cold and snowy and all that watching the game. So I think that kind of helps, in that sense as well. So I think it's smart. I think Chicago has a really good shot at getting the Super Bowl if they have a
for sure
close stadium. Yeah. I don't think Buffalo is going to be tough. I don't know if that's a city that's going to be able to handle what the Super Bowl brings, So
right.
Chicago definitely. That's probably the main reason why they're getting a roof. Forget about the fans. I think it's to get the Super Bowl every, 5 years or so.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's just a bummer that the NFC North teams are starting to move indoors. Like I know the Lions have been inside for a long time because of the Silver Dome and now Ford Field, and the Vikings played at the Metrodome, but the Vikings used to play outside. Then they played outside again for 1 or 2 years when they played at the University of Minnesota when that thing was being built. I don't know. There's something cool about the NFC North teams and the Buffalo Bills just playing outdoors.
I think it's also too like as the team, like I don't think players want to go and play in that kind of weather.
No,
right? So I think it's harder to attract.
But forget the players for a second. You even brought it up about Chicago being a much better place for a Super Bowl than maybe Buffalo. But think about the revenue, not just for the team, for the entire city.
Oh yeah.
Think about the money that'll be brought in that entire week.
That's what it's about. That's what it's all about.
That's reason enough to pay off the stadium in 1 year.
Well, we'll certainly have to find out here. And Omen Black here, I guess, is a Philadelphia Eagles fan. He says, "Fly, Eagles, fly." John Gonzalez is telling me about the backstory of the Bills Stadium, which, yeah, I mean, I hear you, John. I'm with you. We're generally on the same page. But I got to move on here. Very quickly, Giants.
To that comment, the Eagles have just gotten stupidly better. It's unbelievable.
But very quickly, I want to move on because I do want to get to Dolan time. I could hang on to the politics of Buffalo and Las Vegas, all these places. But I want to get very quickly. Giants, Dexter Lawrence gets a 4-year, $60 million guaranteed extension. I know it's 90, but it's actually 60 guaranteed. Third highest tackle in the league that's paid. And any thoughts on that here very quickly?
I'll tell you one thing. It's got an impact on Quentin Williams. That's for sure. Think about 2 defensive tackles in the same draft. I think Lawrence, went 17th or 18th overall in that first round, and Quentin Williams was obviously the 3rd overall pick. Listen, maybe it's starting to validate Dave Gettleman a little bit. I mean, Daniel Jones got a contract extension.
What about Barkley? That's my question.
Barkley is in limbo right now. I mean, Andrew Thomas is looking like a tremendous left tackle. Listen, this is great for the Giants. I mean, he's become an absolute stud at defensive tackle, and he deserves the contract. He really does.
Definitely. And you know what? It just brings Quentin Williams, his new deal whenever it gets done is just going to bring it up because he'll probably ask for a little bit more, So, just like with the quarterbacks, once one guy makes a certain amount, like when Jalen Hurts got his contract, then Lamar Jackson went on top of him. And then guess what? Joe Burrow is next, right? Justin Herbert. These guys are going to get paid all, over the top on that. So these prices just keep going up, and hopefully the Jets get this done. And I think they will. I think, they had to get the Rodgers deal done first, and they have to rework his deal and all that.
Which I'm hearing based from Connor Hughes that should be done next week.
Yeah,
so maybe once that's done,
right,
that puts the focus on Quentin Williams because the rest of the roster seems to be set, even with Corey Davis still here, and it looks like and sounds like they're going to keep Corey Davis, and you know what? That's fine. Having more guys at wide receiver is not a bad thing. Rodgers will have plenty of options to spread the ball around to. Definitely. And from what we're hearing, we're going to be excited. We're going to like the contract Rodgers signs. It's going to open up a lot of cap flexibility, and hopefully that is the starting point for Joe Douglas getting this Quentin Williams deal done.
Well, certainly hope here. And I mean, the Brute Force, you want to add anything? Giants obviously make some news. Jets did make some news also. And obviously Lamar Jackson was in the news. Ravens also made some additions. So anything
it's a little better than a running back, I think.
Yeah, come on, John. I mean, really? I understand what you're trying to say, but this guy is a good quarterback as well.
I mean, there's a point to be made that he hasn't had
Lamar Jackson is not, obviously we know he could be better throwing, but his issue is that
I have called him a glorified running back, which he is.
Well, I mean,
we need to say
on this.
We need to say he needs to stay on the field. Okay, and he needed more weapons, and I think now he has a few more. Okay, I think he'll be better this season throwing the ball. I know, I get John's point. I'm not completely denying it. But what I will say is that I think he's going to do better this season in a really good division, by the way, the AFC North. All of a sudden,
it's a really good division now. All of a sudden, you got the Bengals, you got the Browns, you got obviously the beloved Pittsburgh Steelers, and then you got those Baltimore Ravens there.
Well, the only thing that makes me smile is that with all these good teams in the AFC, I don't know if the Steelers can hang with all of them, but every time I doubt them, they just go 500 again.
And,
So,
I was going to say, they find a way. When there's a will, there's a way with the Steelers. They find a way.
but listen, with Dexter Lawrence, obviously, yeah, it's great. Oh boy! But listen, with Dexter Lawrence, it's great for the Giants. We'd like to also welcome Mr. Randall Cobb to the Jets. I think that one everybody saw coming quick.
1 year deal. I think that was right. A 1 year contract.
It's a 1 year deal. You knew that was coming because Randall Cobb and Aaron Rodgers might as well just be attached. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what they are. So, but it's not a bad option for the Jets. It's a veteran guy. It's a guy who could get in that locker room and have a presence. Catch a few balls. But I think you guys made a good point about wide receiver depth. I think that's very important. I think that kind of goes under the radar. That you need that. And I think that it's good that the Jets have it, that they have a lot of guys they can go to in the wide receiver room, and they don't feel shortchanged. It's almost like the bullpen in a way. You want to have enough guys in the bullpen that you can trust. Wide receivers, same thing. We'll see what happens on our running back position behind Breece Hall. But ultimately, I'm happy with the Jets. I think the Giants should be happy, but at the same time, the Giants, listen, they got the Eagles in their way. You know what I have to say about the Cowboys, all right? I think they can get past the Cowboys, all right? Even though the Cowboys, they did some good things too, but we know them. They're frauds. They'll accident waiting to happen.
Regular season, though, they've been a little better the last couple of years. Postseason, that leaves to be desired.
But I will say that I think the Giants will compete with the Cowboys. They ain't competing with the Eagles, but they'll try to compete with the Cowboys and some of those other teams. Like the Minnesotas of the world that will be in the picture. And our team, Tom, the Detroit Lions, which I said it in the Sports Authorities group. I said it.
It's funny because John Gonzalez had this trivia question.
It
was an interesting one. It was actually, I have to say, this was one of the better trivia questions. I saw who was the last Detroit Lions quarterback to win a playoff game? And I was like, yeah, I had to think about that.
And who got it right?
Chris Pizzea?
Chris Pizzea did. Well, you know what? I think I got it right, too, because I said the next one is going to be Jared Goff this season. And I think it's going to happen, Tom Bryce. It's going to happen. I think the Lions are not only going to make the playoffs this season, but I think they might win a playoff game. I'm starting to feel more and more confident in that.
Wow, but that was a great question, though, because you think about that, right? 91. And then you think about all the quarterbacks since the Lions have had. I mean, Stafford obviously gets them to the playoffs a few times. They had, Scott Mitchell and Rodney Peete, right? Rodney Peete probably more known for his better half. But then you think about the different quarterbacks they've had. And then it's been, Eric Kramer, right, was the one? Eric Kramer, you said? 1991. That's 32 years ago.
It's been too long. I'm not sure at what point the odds will come out. But if they're not the favorites, I think Minnesota will be slightly favored, but I think it'll be neck and neck between the Vikings and Lions this year.
It'll be so fascinating when the Vegas lines come out, like the win numbers, because Detroit wins 9 last year and Minnesota wins 13, but you almost have to think I'm assuming 10.5 will be both those teams, something like that.
I mean, Tom, you got to
I would actually think Vegas probably sets the Lions at probably 8.5 or 9.5. I don't think they're going to fully buy stock just yet.
You don't think they're going to go 10 at least? I mean, Minnesota.
Listen, I don't think they'll fully buy stock into one good year.
But the division, though, we just ran over the teams in that division, though. You have Chicago.
I think they might oversell you, Minnesota, and give them a higher number, even though Green Bay's
because of the lack of division.
Even though Green Bay's number should be lower, and I think Chicago's number is going to be higher too. I think they're going to be better than we think.
Maybe you give them 7, but you bring Green Bay down.
Exactly.
And then you got Minnesota with 13. All right, maybe you keep them at 11, 12.
11 okay, and a half, probably.
I don't think Minnesota will be at 13. It's got to be a little lower.
Yeah, that's what
they'll probably. My guess is they'll set Minnesota at 10.5 or 11.5. They'll set Detroit at 9.5.
Yeah, just under.
They'll probably put the Bears at 7.5, and
we'll see.
They'll probably put the Packers around there.
I still say
I don't think Detroit's starting 1-5 this year. That's all I'm going to say.
And that's why I'm with you,
no,
Brad.
They shouldn't.
I think Detroit gets between 10 or 11. That's what I think. Eagles still the best team to improve. They improved. I think trading Swift was a mistake. All right, you know what? I'll get to all that another time. but because it is
You got
getting
good.
late, and I want to get to that time before we get to closing thoughts. You know what time it is here, the Brute Force Pride was. Certainly, you were really sweating bullets there because we were on the air Tuesday. We were talking with myself, you, and James. Like, when should we go on? Should we do Dolan time during the game? Should we wait? They were down 6 with about 7 minutes left. Should we do it then and kind of get your mind off a loss? But yet we waited, and it was a great move. And here we are as we go into Saturday's game here. It's 1-1 and a lot to say here. Yet another edition of playoff time. So the Brute Force, you know what time it is when it comes to Dolan time.
Yeah, it is Dolan time. And listen, it's still time to be jolly. It's still time to be excited. All right, because New York, stand up. We should still be standing up. I will not be singing this week, by the way. No singing. All right, but what I will say, okay, is that the New York Knicks are okay. I think that, they lost the first game, obviously, and that was a tough loss. And then Jimmy Butler doesn't play the second game. I think a lot of people are discrediting the Knicks win because Butler didn't play. I think you should give more credit to Miami. I mean, I'm about to start calling him Steph Vincent because Gabe Vincent looks like Steph Curry out there in the second game. I mean, you got other guys like Caleb Martin dropping 21 and shooting threes. Like, I watched this guy almost all season.
3 undrafted players start in game 2, Miami. That was
unbelievable. Listen, this is a credit to Miami because this team is known for getting these undrafted guys and making them into great players. So, listen, the Knicks did their job. Randall came back, had a good game.
25 and 12,
job. I mean, Josh Hart, again, just unbelievable. This guy and what he does. Barrett had a good game. So, the Knicks had a better complete game. We're still worried about the Knicks bench, though. The Knicks bench, with Quickly and Grimes, there's a lot to be concerned about
here in this series and even the Cleveland series. I mean, here was a guy that was runner-up to 6-man in this playoff. He looked so far like.
Yeah, I mean, he had a game or two that was bad in the Cavaliers series, and then Tom Thibodeau all of a sudden kind of soured on him. Now doesn't play him consistent minutes. He did have a little spurt in game 2 where he scored a couple baskets, but the guy off the bench that was a big impact, Tom Bryce, and by the way, I believe today was his birthday as well, was Isaiah Hartenstein. He came off the bench. He got some big rebounds, some second chance points, some rim finishes around the rim, block shot. He had a big impact on that game against Miami. So, 1-1. You can't even spell it. It's Hartenstein, all right? Not Hartenstein. Hartenstein, all right? So, listen. He played really well, so I'm optimistic going into Game 3. We're going down to Miami, which, of course, I wasn't there too far, and listen, we're talking about Florida. I mean, my God, Florida right now with the college teams, with the hockey team, with Miami.
I know, right? It's like they all of a sudden had an unbelievable run. Marlins, Panthers, Heat. I mean, just great run for the FAU.
Listen, I might have to go back down there to drink what they're drinking because there's some winning formula down there.
You didn't bring it here to New York. You certainly didn't bring it here for the Mets. You were down there, and you haven't brought the Mets much.
Not to provoke John Gonzalez, but maybe I should have stole some towels so I could rub it on me with all of that winning that's going on down there.
What certainly helped us with the baseball teams. The Mets and Yankees were playing 500.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Even the Marlins are. I know you said the Marlins fell back under, but they're playing good baseball too. So there's a lot good going on in Florida. And oh God, here he goes. But listen, I am impressed with the way the Miami Heat obviously are playing. I am worried that when Jimmy Butler comes back, that this team is going to be very formidable. But I will say the New York Knicks, even though they struggled throughout the game to stop Miami without Butler, when it came to that winning time, Tom Bryce, the last 5 to 4 minutes of the game, they did buckle down. They did get stops. They did do it when it mattered. And if these games are going to be close, Tom, all these games are going to come down to the stretch. This is what the Heat and Knicks always do. They're always close games. But it's going to be about which team can close. And that's always been the Knicks' problem in the past. But with Jalen Brunson and the team
he
that
had
they
10 points, though, in that last 6:43.
What I'm saying is
might be the problem that was solved here coming up.
Right. So what I'm saying is we have a closer. We have a guy who could close the game. We have a guy who can make shots. And listen, Josh Hart, by the way, also hit a 3 in the corner that was huge late in the game. So, these guys are closers.
That was the one that put us up 4, I think, if I'm not mistaken, right?
So they know how to finish games. I think that's a big thing for the Knicks. That's kind of been their kryptonite, has been finishing games. But now they have 2 guys that know how to finish games. And I think that's big. And I think with Jimmy Butler, they will make the proper adjustments. I do think that realistically in Miami, I think they'll go 1-1. I think the Knicks will win one. Miami will win one. They'll come back to the Garden. Hopefully the Knicks will take care of business. And again, I think this series is going to go to 7 games. They're going to keep splitting, and then at the end, it's going to be at the Garden, and we're going to see who comes through. And I said it earlier, I still believe that the New York Knicks are going to win. And I'm starting to feel better, especially tonight, Tom, after the Celtics had a big performance against the 76ers.
Yep. I was watching that on the way home.
Yeah, Alec Willis, you might have to, stop calling it the varsity game and the JV game because, listen, it might happen. The Knicks against the Celtics in the conference finals.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We were talking about that the last time they played in a conference final. They played in the second round. They played in the first round 10 years ago. But in the conference final, I guess maybe the 70s, maybe that happened at some point. Maybe
I gotta tell you, a Game 7 at the Garden would be pretty epic.
Oh man,
you think about that, right?
We just haven't seen much playoff basketball at the Garden. It's even a pretty cool atmosphere.
When was the last time even a Game 7?
Game 7 at home, but
I was gonna say, yeah.
Game 7 Knicks at the Garden. Can't even
90s maybe, like 1995.
When they beat the Pacers to get to the finals. Was that a Game 7?
I think there was one more after that. That was the finger roll game where Patrick Ewing with the finger roll in the next year he missed it where he had he would try to finger roll. I've seen it on NBA TV. I think they had a 7th game there, but there hasn't been a 7th game at the Garden. I want to say since
but when they beat the Pacers to get to the finals in '94.
Yeah,
was that a 7?
That was a 7, but the next year. Because I watched this one year on NBA TV. It was 1995 the next year, and Patrick Ewing missed a finger roll, and that was the 7th game at the Garden. But after that, I don't think the Knicks have actually been in a 7th game at the Garden. So you think about that, right? No. That's almost 30 years.
Correct. So, yeah, Justin's 100% right. That would be an epic atmosphere and game, and I do think it's going to happen. I just think this season, this series is going to be nip and tuck. It's going to go back and forth. And I just think that it's going to come down to that last game, and boy, the Garden will be absolutely insane.
Think about the price for that ticket. That would have to be one of the most expensive tickets we would see in this time. I know the Rangers were in the Cup Finals. I know the Yankees have been in the World Series since then, but that would be one of the most expensive tickets.
Well, since John Gonzalez is friends with James Dolan, why don't you tell him to lower the prices a little bit so maybe we could think about showing up. All right, if there was a Game 7 at the Garden, could you lower the prices so we can show up?
I was going to say, is there actually be a Knicks fan?
I even wanted to go to those Rangers, either or, Prudential Center or MSG, and the MSG prices were double. You couldn't get into a first-round game against the Devils for less than $400. That's the worst seats.
Yeah, I believe that because when I went,
I just looked up on I looked up on Game Time. You could go to Game 3 tomorrow at the Kaseya Center in Miami for about $120. It's not bad. So second round, I'd say that's reasonable. Second round, $120.
$120? That's not that bad. You know what?
Garden for Game 5, no less than $350.
Listen, 500, 350. Listen, that makes sense. I mean, listen, in 2017, I want to say I went to Rangers Canadians Game 2, and I paid like $250 for like the worst. So if you said like the worst was $350, yeah, that makes sense with inflation. But Joseph Bostrom says he had 94, 95, both 7 games in Indiana. John Gonzalez says he'll be there for Game 7. But to back you up, Bruton, a couple of things. If it goes the distance, Knicks 24-17 on the road this year. Actually, most road wins. It's again going way back in the time machine. 1997. That was the last time the Knicks had won at least 24 games on the road. And the Knicks actually had the 5th most wins in the league on the road this year. And they beat the Celtics twice in Boston this year.
What was the Charles Smith game? Was that a Game 7?
It was a 5th game. That was the 5th game.
That was a Game 5?
That was the one where he missed like 18,000 dunks, right?
Yeah.
18,000. Yeah, that was 1993, right? 5th game.
Oh, that was before that. Okay. All right.
Before that.
Yeah.
That was
Tom, quickly, let me get on your point quickly because that's a great point, actually. And that's part of the reason why I'm really confident in the Knicks because they have been a great road team
And
all
they
season.
beat Miami on the road this year in the regular
Right.
season.
That was one of the biggest games of the year. I mean, you remember that game that Randall hit that three in the corner, after a bunch of fumbles and all that, and they finally got the ball, and he hit the buzzer beater. But listen, that's what it's going to come down to in this series, Tom. It's going to be those close games. But I really believe that the Knicks can not only execute at the Garden, but they could get a game in Miami, maybe even two. They might surprise us. We'll see. But I'm confident in the Knicks winning on the road. I know Miami, listen, they're going to be fired up too, but it ain't the Garden. They'll it'll be a different atmosphere down there. But with that being said, the Knicks can handle it. They've shown that all season. They could win in some tough environments on the road. I know this is a different animal, but even in the first round, Tom, I mean, they took care of Cleveland twice.
Beat Cleveland twice on the road there. They beat him in the regular season. They've got wins over Denver on the road. They've got wins over the 76ers on the road. So they have shown, in fact, the Knicks actually had a better regular season record on the road than at Madison Square Garden. They were 23-18 at the world's most famous arena and 24-17 on the road. So the Knicks actually feel comfortable in these situations. So maybe that bodes well for them.
I'll add one more team they beat on the road, Tom, just to, bust a couple nuggets. The Celtics, they beat them on the road too.
Well, I mentioned that at the top. They beat them twice on the road.
Right. So again, that's leading up to hopefully what we are hoping to be that Eastern Conference Final.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm ready for it. I mean, obviously Knicks fans are, and the Knicks also have to do one other thing, which is improve the free throw shooting, because I know Mitchell Robertson is atrocious, but they have the lowest free throw shooting percentage of any team out there remaining. So
all
the free throws
season,
have to improve.
All season free throws have been a problem. So that's something that
we'll talk about at our level. How many times have we talked about whether we did the St. Joe's post game and pre games, whether we spoke with the different coaches we've had on over the past 3 years together? We always talk about those free throws, how they're important.
Listen, it trickles down all the way to my coaching, Free throws are very important. And by the way, I don't want to spoil it yet, but free throws might be very important in a big game on Sunday that I'll talk about in my closing thoughts.
We're going to do that for sure. You want to say, Justin, something real quick before I move on?
Another thing that they need to do, too, and they finally did it to a degree because they finally shot 40%, is the Knicks need to hit their threes. That's one thing they really haven't been doing this postseason. They really haven't been hitting their threes. So if they get cold again, then Miami's going to have a bit of a leg up. But obviously we'll see. I mean, it sounds like Butler is going to play. Obviously it seems like the Knicks are going to.
Yeah, he was like, I think I had him. So I had him in the notes. Yeah, the notes. So I had him as of today. This was this afternoon. They had him listed as likely. So that's what I had.
I think he's officially listed as questionable, but everybody's saying that he's going to play.
He was working out on the court yesterday. He'll be playing.
Yeah, listen, the New York.
What I don't understand is why are there 9,000 days off in between games?
The NHL is always two.
I get it occasionally. You have to move game. You have to push games back because of scheduling conflicts with the arena, right? Like for example, in the first round between the Kings and the Oilers, there was a 3 days off between I think games 3 and 4 or something like that, because, I think it was between games 5 and 6 because the Clippers would have. Even though they got eliminated before that, the Clippers were scheduled to play a game on Thursday, and the Lakers played at the Staples Center on Friday. Now, granted, the Knicks do share their arena, even though the Rangers are out, but the Heat don't. Why was Game 4? Why was Game 3 not? All right, maybe you don't want to play every other day, get extra day for travel. Why wasn't it tonight? I mean,
the fact is that the Celtics and Sixers played after the Knicks game 2.
Now, I have a theory on that. Here's my theory on that. And my theory is that because the NBA is shared by two different networks, one is Turner, the other one is ESPN. And now there's also an NHL thing that's involved. I think the Devils in Carolina played on Turner.
Yeah.
So I think that has something to do with the packages themselves. Maybe that's my theory. Why you see some of these.
The other thing is they don't wait for these series to end. Like on Sunday when the Knicks and Heat played game 1, the game after that was Warriors Kings
Tuesday.
game 7.
Yeah.
So why don't we finish the round and then set everything up?
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is because of the networks, because of the packages split between Turner and ESPN. It's the only thing I can think of. And now
Maybe.
because Turner has the NHL, they're
Right.
trying to make it where they don't want to compete, and one network has one sport, the other. I mean, that's my theory. But I agree with you. It comes up all the time in this time of year because you have the NBA teams in the NBA and the NHL playoffs. You're trying to figure out who's there. Then you have to figure out how to get these buildings ready. So there is a bunch.
I don't think there are any teams left in either of the postseasons that share a building anymore. I don't think so. We're thinking about the Panthers and Leafs. They're not sharing a building because the Raptors are out.
Yep.
The Devils and Hurricanes, they're not sharing a building.
Lakers aren't sharing it.
The Lakers are not sharing because the Kings
Denver's
are out
not
and the
sharing
Clippers
it.
are out.
The Avalanche are out.
And then Nuggets.
Seattle and Edmonton aren't sharing anything.
No, and what's the other one? Dallas. They don't. Well, they share with the Mavericks, but they're out.
Well, because of
They don't
Kyrie
get
Irving,
off.
yeah, they're out.
And then who's Dallas playing? Dallas is playing
Philadelphia.
and
Obviously.
Vegas.
Yeah. Well,
Yes,
Vegas, if they get their way,
the Sixers share a building, but the Flyers
are out. Well, Vegas gets their way, they'll share everything with everybody. I mean, at some point, because it seems like the way sports is going, Vegas is going everywhere here. But before we get to
we're going head first into an NBA team in Vegas at some point.
That was my next point. We got baseball.
Listen, we're getting Vegas. We're getting baseball in a couple of years. We've already got the NHL. We've got the NFL now.
I'll get into one last funny story here. Brad will appreciate this. I was in Brooklyn a few days ago, and I ran into an ex-coach, and he was actually the guy I know is actually from Nevada, and he was telling me how far he goes back, and maybe John Gonzalez will appreciate that the only team that used to be in town was UNLV. That used to be at one time the only thing in town in Vegas. Now you've got pretty much everything that's either there or coming. So the world does change here, but NBA scores though before we get out of here. Suns are up 2 over the Nuggets after 3. We had here the 76ers and Celtics. Boston 114, Philadelphia 102. Warriors last night get even 1-1, 127 to 100. So we'll also see here coming up here, Knicks and Heat are 3:30, and then Warriors and Lakers 8 o'clock. Tomorrow, you have a doubleheader of coverage here also. And John Gonzalez says Harden should be doing construction with all the bricks he threw up today.
He did throw a lot of bricks. I will say that.
Well, he could help out, and maybe with that bricks in Buffalo starting in June. Maybe that he'll help out with. But that's here nor there. We certainly ran the gauntlet. I had a great time here. Spoke about a lot of different things here in the world of sports. So want to get to some closing thoughts as we're getting close to that time. So, Chris, I'm going to give you the floor. I have the liftoff Jets here. I'm looking forward to playing that this week. I think I'm live tomorrow night, actually, for WWE Backlash post reaction. So I'll play that before the show. And talking rivals, enjoyed hearing that you and Patrick talk about these Boston Reds. That's what I still can't figure out. And I don't think anybody can right now. But no. I want to give you the floor, and anything else you want to share, and fire away, my friend.
Thank you, Tom. Guys, great show as always. I'm looking forward to doing the other show, doing the Talking Rivals on Monday. We'll catch up on, hopefully the Yankees could pull a game out this weekend against Tampa. And then we'll catch up on the Jets. We should have our friend Andrew Golden on for the liftoff. We're going to go over the draft picks. I know we went over it this week, but he gets into it more. He watches more film, so he'll have more details on them. So we'll definitely get on that. I just want to know, is this show going to be able to handle the brute force if the Knicks go on to the Eastern Conference Finals and face the Boston Celtics?
I got a better one for you.
No,
I got a better one for you.
It's not.
Can his voice hold it? That's the
no, it's not.
No, too. You're right.
Well,
No.
I already said on last week's show the Knicks are going to the NBA Finals.
Oh boy!
There's no way. There's no way.
No. Listen, and I'll say this, Chris. I'll hand it back to you. Is that this guy Alec Willis? All right, really thinks he's going to come on here and pop my bubble if they make it in there. Please, all right. Ain't nobody. Listen, Tom's going to have to bring on wrestlers to stop me. All right.
We have one right now that's tuned in. Wants to say hello. He actually just wrestled earlier. Here to say that is, of course, James Marshall, aka Catalyst. He's the interstate openweight champion, and he might be needed here. So Mr. Marshall might need you to be restrained for yourself. So yeah, certainly, Mr. Marshall, we can contact him. He's been on Sportswire Radio numerous times, so we'll certainly add him to the list, Brad.
There we go. So I guess that might be their only shot to stop me. The Knicks make the conference finals. Oh man, listen, I'm going to need more holes.
I've said this before. Actually, before I bring it back to you, Chris, I've been doing this 4.5 years, and whether it was with you, Brad, whether it was when Kyle Christopher was here, whether it was Ray DeNiro, all these other guys that would come on the show, Anthony Finkel, the one team that I think the city would certainly have a hard time kind of containing the fan base over enthusiasm of is the Knicks. Because you think about this town, when the Knicks win, it hasn't been often, there's a different feel. Yes, the Yankees, it's a Yankee town, no question. The Giants, yes, and even the Mets.
They win one game. 7th Avenue is completely shut down for hours.
That's my point, but you just made my exact point. This town, when the Knicks win, I actually think of all the sports, that's the team that I think that this city is going to have a real hard time kind of containing himself because it hasn't happened much. And
100%. There's no doubt in my mind, even though basketball might not be the number one sport in the city, I still think New York's a baseball town. But there is no team that captivates the city like the New York Knicks. And when the Knicks are good, they are the team in town.
Absolutely. Listen, I go back to being a little kid in the mid to late 90s. The Knicks had 2 NBA Finals appearances. And I just remember that this city, the way it was when the Knicks, again, the Rangers might have won a cup. You might have had the Giants win a couple Super Bowls. Mets, we had the 2 World Series. Even the Jets, we had those couple of back-to-back championship games. It just pales into comparison, in my opinion, with the New York Knicks, if they're in a spot. I mean, 2013 was round 2. I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, it just hasn't happened. So, you know, that will certainly
explode if the Knicks win the finals.
Well,
I think it really will.
Of the 4 of us, I'm the one that actually lives in this city, so I'll have to let you know how things prep out to be. But obviously, all great stuff here. Chris, definitely want everybody to follow you at CP7NY on Twitter and Instagram, and also other quick NBA news of note. Milwaukee Bucks had fired Mike Budenholzer, kind of a questionable timing there after the death of his brother last week. So apparently they say it was in the making, but obviously questionable news there. Certainly Budenholzer will get a job if he wants it, but
real quick, would the Nets be interested in him?
I thought
they just signed Jacques Vaughn to a multi-year extension.
Oh, they did.
When they named him the permanent coach.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And listen, I do really like what Jacques Vaughn has done. I think he did a really good job stabilizing things. Listen, they got to get a roster that's going to be built for the postseason. They clearly have a roster that's good enough to make the postseason because they were able to clearly hang on and make the postseason as the 6th seed. They're going to need somebody, and hell, maybe it's Damian Lillard, but they're going to need somebody to help them in the postseason.
Well, we're going to find out. Obviously, we'll see what happens with him. And Justin, I then kind of turn it over to you. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? Obviously, baseball banter. I'm sure one of these days we'll definitely look forward to hearing. And anything else, my friend, you can go fire away.
Well, I'm going to first start off by saying I'm completely speechless when it comes to the Devils. We were here 2 weeks ago, and I had to rant on this team after getting destroyed each game 5-1 by the Rangers, and here we are again. Game 1 they lose 5-1 to the Hurricanes. Game 2 they lose 6-1 tonight to the Hurricanes, and I'm at a loss for words because the difference between the Rangers and the Hurricanes are just a much better defensive team, and they just don't allow the Devils to play their speed game like the Rangers do because the Rangers just didn't quite have the speed the Devils do. And now you're kind of seeing a mirror image of each other with the Hurricanes' speed. And even despite their injuries to, guys like Pacioretty, Svechnikov, Teravainen's out with the broken hand, they're missing a lot of guys. and still, and I thought that was gutsy by Rod Brindamore to go with Frederick Anderson in Game 6 against the Islanders. And it's paid dividends because he's been great, and he's been great in the first 2 games. Even though the Devils, I don't think have really given him a reason to be great. I think they kind of had some outside opportunities. They really haven't tested Anderson as much as I'd like to, because one thing's for certain, we're not facing Igor Shesterkin here. I mean, even if the Devils do somehow go on in the postseason, we've already faced the best goaltender we could possibly face, and that's part of what's maddening of these first 2 games. And the other thing is that we're just not matching their intensity. Clearly, they use the 5 days off to their benefit. They look fresh, they look fast, and they're rolling 4 lines. And tonight they picked up the physicality. Jesperi Kokoniemi with 2 goals, also with a couple of massive hits. They're getting contributions up and down the lineup. And while it's nice to see guys like Nate Bastian score in Game 1 and Miles Wood score tonight, we've seen Michael McLeod with his contributions. It's really time for the big guns to step up. And I'm going to leave Jack Hughes out of this for a second because I think he's doing everything he can, and he did produce very well in the Rangers series. And he's trying to create his space, and he's doing a good job, and he's getting good shots on net. But guys like Nico Hischier, guys like Jesper Bratt, guys like Timo Meier, where are you? I mean, because none of these guys have scored. I mean, Nico has a few assists, and that's all well and good. But Jesper has just an empty net goal. Timo hasn't scored at all, even though I think he's actually the leading shot maker on the Devils. He's got the most shots of any of the Devils. It's time for the top 6 to step up, and this is another dig deep time. Now, I'm not going to criticize what they choose for the goaltender in Game 3 if they want to stick with Akira Schmid, because I don't think Akira Schmid's been all that bad. I just don't think he's been great, and we've played like dog you-know-what in front of him, and it's been an absolute mess. And again, it's dig deep time. One guy that I do think needs to come out of the lineup is Ryan Graves, because I am sick of the turnovers. I had called out Miles Wood. I'd called out Brendan Smith a couple of weeks ago when they were down 0-2 to the Rangers. And, those 2 guys did come out of the lineup, and, things did change. But it's going to be a taller order. And the Devils are going to have to make massive adjustments, not just the adjustments that they made against the Rangers. They're going to have to make massive adjustments if they want to even sniff making this a series. And, it's been a tremendous season, but, clearly Carolina has picked up the postseason intensity because these 2 teams were pretty even all year long. Both teams won twice in the 4 matchups, and one of the Carolina wins was in a shootout. So it's not like they dominated the Devils in the regular season. It's not like the Devils truly dominated the Hurricanes either. And it's just been everything you want if you're a Canes fan, and everything opposite of that if you're a Devils fan. It's definitely been a nightmarish start to the series. So hopefully they bounce back on Sunday afternoon. Obviously, season on the line, because you really don't want to be falling down 3-0. We've already been to this point down 2-0. I mean, how many times can you really fall down 2-0 and expect to win 4 out of the next 5? So, listen, I'll still remain hopeful for this team, but it's getting late early. That's for sure.
Well, we'll certainly find out. Yep, we'll certainly find out. All right.
Well, I mean, listen, as we touched on the baseball. I know I've been on a little bit of a hiatus on the baseball banter. I do have plans on getting back to it as soon as a little more time frees up. But as for that, a lot of things to touch on. And like I said when we were having our baseball conversation, it's time to have a conversation about the Cardinals, and they lost again tonight to the Tigers, and they now I saw this stat. The Cardinals fall to 0-11 in series openers.
Oof.
They've lost every opening
They're
game.
10-23. I mean, realistically,
That's crazy.
Yeah,
mean-
it's been a very, very long time since they've been this bad, and they said something about because they're 13 games under 500. They said never once during the Yadier Molina era were they ever that far under 500. Which
I don't even, it's even
Crazy.
hard to think when they're under 500
at
right?
all. Yeah, exactly. It always seems like they're a team they're always a team with a winning record, and here they are sitting at 10-23, and I don't even know what to say. I mean, I didn't think coming into the year that this was a team with a bad roster. I thought this was a decent team. I might have even said that they were going to win the Central, but here they are, under 500, 10-23. I mean, I'm looking
They've
at
had 15
here the last
consecutive
time.
winning seasons. 15 consecutive winning
2000,
seasons.
2007, they were 78-84.
That's
I mean, you have to go. You even have to go back to
99.
nine-
That was the other one.
1990 as the last time that they lost 90 games.
Yeah, and 99 was their last other losing season. So you think this franchise,
75,
right?
Yeah, 75 wins, 86 losses. Yep.
In a quarter century, they got 2 losing seasons. It's them and the
Yep.
Yankees that are always over 500. Them and the Yankees.
Absolutely.
It's-
And I think it's. I hate to put this on the manager, but I feel like I have to, even though it's his second year. I think he's going to be the first to go. I think Oli Marmol is going to be the first manager to go.
Well, you know what? He certainly might. I mean, if they continue to go where they're going and they're on a pace to have a historic season, I mean, the Cardinals don't lose, like you said, 90 games in a season. Last time that they did that was 1990, 70 and 92. And you have to go back even further for them to have a worse season, 1978, 69 and 93. So, we'll have to see, and obviously want everybody to follow you on Instagram and Twitter, also JGNLE91, and we'll certainly look forward to whenever that baseball banter comes up. But we certainly didn't save the best for last, but we saved the biggest for last. And closing thoughts from the brute force Brad Weiss. Obviously, we'll touch upon James D. Simone. Got a lot of people on YouTube that listen to us. Obviously, some of the stuff we did on Instagram picked up a lot of new subscribers on YouTube. Really appreciate that. You can catch us there on Sportswire Radio on YouTube and Facebook as well. And might want to touch upon kind of a sad story that kind of hit us home here in the Level Up basketball community. Just I think a story that was in Newsday I caught, and just a few thoughts on that. And thankfully, Brad, you weren't a part of that, but I do want to give you the floor here, some closing thoughts, and anything else you want to plug, share, say, and fire away.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another great week of the show. Thank you, Chris and Justin, Rob Maraska, as well as Randy Dillon for a great week of Friday Night Live. You can certainly find me on Facebook, Bradley Weiss, Twitter at BradWeiss20, and searching Instagram at BWeiss20 or at Coach Brad Weiss. I will start by saying this. Cinco de Mayo does represent my parents' anniversary, so I want to give both the Gentle Force and the Super Force a happy anniversary for their many years together. So I want to congratulate them, and it's another great year. So I'm very happy for that. When it comes to Level Up, I'm wearing my Level Up My Game shirt today. First, because of we're in a tournament this weekend. I'm excited for it. It's right here locally. And I referenced that I was going to play somebody this weekend. Well, on Sunday at 10 o'clock, Tom Bryce, it's me against Matt Hurd. And it's a big game. It's going to be the third game to qualify for the championship. So normally that's a big game regardless, to see which team will get there. So we're playing at 10 a.m. on Sunday. Looking forward to that. And next weekend I'll be in Matt Hurd's tournament that he's running with his own program. So I'm excited for that. Certainly I'll see Mr. McNeely this weekend, so I'm excited to see him. I'm actually going against Basir Hoyt as well.
Basir, we know Basir very well. Obviously,
we know Basir. So
I think Basir's going to be a big player for us next season.
Yeah, so Basir coaches with the Rising Stars, so I'll be playing him, playing Matt Hurd. I'll see a few other familiar faces this weekend. So
tell them I send my regards and be seeing you soon. Tell them.
For sure, I will. So I will see them, and I'm excited for that. with that being said, I do have to address this extremely devastating, depressing topic because I wouldn't be able to end the show without definitely mourning the lives of two great, wonderful kids that lost their lives tragically on Wednesday night. Drew Hasenbein and Ethan Falkowitz. Unfortunately, a drunk driver driving on the wrong side of the road took their lives in the side of the car. These both kids had played for Level Up Long Island in the past, were good kids. In fact, Ethan's brother, Landon, actually played for me last season. So I know Landon and I know the family. I can only imagine what they're going through. Drew actually followed me on Instagram, was a guy who would look at some of our clips and follow us. So I feel absolutely terrible. Two kids from Roslyn that, again, in the community, just driving home after a big win in tennis. And both of them were varsity tennis players in 8th grade. One of them was already at a really high level and, was destined for a Division I scholarship. So it's just depressing news. The hardest part for me is that same intersection the news came through, I drove by 10 minutes after it happened. And again, I drive through that intersection every Wednesday night. And just to think that if I would have left a little earlier, which I do on some occasions, that could have been me. So I am certainly affected by this story. I feel terribly for those families. I'm glad to hear that Landon was able to address and the parents were able to address a large crowd of people who were in support of him. This whole notion of drinking and driving is a very dangerous topic, and it happens way too much. We don't hear about it a lot, but when it hits home like this, we hear about it, and it's definitely devastating that it took two kids' lives who were 8th graders just going home and celebrating a great win against Syosset, and we're scheduled to play Plainview actually this week. Obviously has been canceled. But I am just heartbroken, devastated for their families. Many people I know from around the Level Up family know them, have seen them, et cetera, et cetera. And just everybody is mourning the loss. So our condolences and our prayers are with the families of the Hasenbeins and the Falkowitzes. I am certainly just devastated by the story and their loss. And it's just, again, another example of why you do not drink and drive. It is a dangerous thing, and it could take lives. And it took two lives of some amazing young individuals who had a very bright future as tennis players and just in the world. And I am just, again, devastated. And again, all my prayers and condolences are with the families of those of the kids that were lost. So I had to address it tonight. It's a sad way to end the show. But these two kids dedicated themselves to the Level Up family. When they first when we first brought the program together, they were a part of it. Like I said, Landon, the brother, is in the program currently. So these two mean a lot to us. They supported me in different ways, so I do know of them. So again, very sad news, very sad article out in Newsday that came out that kind of details everything. But ultimately, this just puts it into a broad perspective. For everybody, and I hope it's just another learning lesson that you cannot drink and drive. But unfortunately, learning lessons are not good enough when lives are taken away.
I just want to say this before we move on. I won't be too long because I know it's late. But if you are drinking while driving, you are taking Uber. I mean, I don't want to say the explicitives here because we're a family station on Sportzwire. But if you are out there and you are driving while you are drunk, there is something wrong with you. Take an Uber. Just don't even do it for yourself. Do it for these poor people, 13 years old, 14 years old, had the rest of their life ahead of them, going to do great things in society, and you took their lives away from them. You not only hurt yourself, but you hurt people that had nothing to do with what you did. So listen, do it for yourself. You don't want to do it for you. Just do it for the people that you impacted upon. And I got to say, the stupidest thing that I ever hear all the time is people say, yeah, I had a beer. I had 2 beers. I could do it. No, because if something happens like this where innocent lives were taken away for no apparent reason, just call an Uber, call a Lyft, walk home even. I mean, or take the Long Island. Listen, whatever it is, just don't get in that vehicle. Sleep in the vehicle for all I care, but don't do something like that. And that's unfortunate because these people, not only does it hit home because obviously for Level Up, obviously we Coach Winter, and I can only imagine what Coach Winter is thinking, Coach everybody else, Coach Dempsey, everybody else. But I mean, to have something like this that just words can't even say what I think about when people want to drive while they're drunk or under the
Listen,
influence.
we've reached the point in 2023 where everything is so easily accessible. And it is not that hard to just get a ride or get on, like you said, get on the train, get on the bus, whatever.
Do something. It's like years
drive.
ago. Listen, I'm not really old, but I can remember 15, 20 years ago. Okay, fine. You know what? Well, the bus is running late. Nobody's around. Not that I would have agreed with it then, but at least I understand that mindset. But now, I mean, all you got to do is you got a phone, you got an app, you call an Uber, you call a Lyft. Even if it costs you $20, you know what? All right, set you back $20, $30, but you know what? You have your life and other people's lives. At least they're spared.
There are very few things in this world that are more inexcusable than drunk driving.
It's just terrible.
It's mind numbing that people do that.
But there's people that go, I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know a big deal. And just,
it's only a mile away. I'm right here, but
yep.
There's no excuse.
It's not a big deal. Oh, but it's just to me, listen, I won't end it on a negative note. I'll always go on a positive, but definitely we certainly want to give our thoughts and prayers to that families that have been lost, everybody else that impacted by this senseless tragedy. Obviously, everybody at Level Up, and I want everybody to follow Level Up, please, at levelup_LA on Instagram and Twitter, but also most importantly, I want to thank James D. Simone for coming on here, the Clark basketball standout going to Misericordia University. A lot of people tuned in. I want to thank James for his time. Obviously, maybe we'll meet him at a Liberty game on a better note here. And obviously, I want to thank everybody that is tuned in tonight on Sportzwire Radio. I want to thank John Gonzalez of the Sports Authority. I want to thank Anthony Finkel. I want to thank Rob Maraska and Randy Dillon. I'll be back. I will be tonight now after Backlash with Chris Belcher and Andy York of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. I'll also be back during the week with more wrestling coverage. But also, if you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming here in about 20 minutes. But I want to thank Chris Mazea, the Liftoff Jets, and the Talking Rivals. I want to thank Justin Gianelli, the Baseball Banter, and the Brute Force Brad Weiss. I know we'll do some more segments. Coach Guardieso is waiting in the wings. Coach Dempsey, a lot of other people, and we'll definitely get to them. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in on Sportswire Radio. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I'm the man behind Sportswire Radio. Be safe out there, and if you are under the influence, just don't drive. Do not drive. I'm telling you, because of what happened here with these two poor young individuals who could have had their whole life ahead of themselves. They don't have that. Think about their parents. Think about their families, their friends, everybody else. So if you are, I know it's going to be a nice weekend finally here in New York. You might want to go out, go to the bar, go to the movies like I did. If you are under the influence, just put the keys away. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in on the number one mobile radio station that is Sportswire Radio. And good night, everyone.